these gentle teachings carry you into the deepest rest you have known in a very long time. I'm sharing with you tonight Buddhist stories so tender, so soothing, so filled with peace, that they have guided millions into the most restorative sleep imaginable. These are not just stories but doorways into tranquility, keys that unlock the natural rest your body and mind have been longing for. You found your way here because something within you recognizes that peace is possible, that rest is your birthright, that this moment can be different from all the restless nights that came before. And you're right. Tonight will be different. These gentle Buddhist tales will wrap around you like the softest blanket. Each word an invitation to let go, each teaching a permission to simply be exactly as you are. Before we begin our journey into deep rest, if you feel moved to share where in the world you are resting tonight, I'd love to know. Are you listening from the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, somewhere else entirely? There's something beautiful about knowing we're all here together, people from every corner of the earth, seeking the same gentle peace, breathing the same intention for rest. Welcome to Sleepy Zen. This is your sanctuary, a space where nothing is demanded of you, where you can release every burden, where gentleness is the only practice. If this resonates with the quiet place within you that just wants to rest, to be held, to finally let go, I invite you to subscribe so you can return whenever sleep feels difficult, whenever peace seems far away. For now, just breathe. Let your body sink a little deeper. Let your eyes remain closed. We're going to walk together through stories so gentle they'll carry you like a leaf floating on a quiet stream, drifting naturally toward the ocean of deep, restful sleep. Our first story takes us to a monastery where cherry blossoms fall like snow and the sound of a meditation bell rings so softly it seems to come from another world. Here lived a young monk named Kaito, who carried a heaviness that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. Kaito had come to the monastery seeking peace, but what he found instead was an endless loop of thoughts that never stopped, worries that multiplied in the quiet, a restlessness that made even sitting still feel like torture. Every night he would lie awake in his small room, his mind racing through everything he had done wrong that day, everything he was afraid might happen tomorrow, every way he felt he was failing at being the peaceful monk he thought he should be. The harder he tried to find peace, the more peace eluded him. He would sit in meditation, and his mind would wander within seconds. He would try to focus on his breath, and instead find himself counting his failures, measuring his inadequacy, drowning in the shame of not being able to do something as simple as rest. One evening, after another sleepless night, another day of exhaustion, Kaito was walking through the garden when he came upon an elderly nun named Hana sitting beneath a cherry tree. She was simply sitting, not meditating formally, not doing anything, just sitting with such ease that even the falling blossoms seemed to slow their descent around her. Kaito stood watching her for a long time, and finally Hana opened her eyes and smiled at him with such warmth that something in his chest loosened slightly. "Come sit with me," she said gently, patting the ground beside her. Kaito sat, and for several minutes they simply stayed there together in silence. He expected her to ask him why he looked so tired, why he seemed so troubled, but she asked nothing. She simply sat with him, present and at ease. Finally, Kaito couldn't contain it anymore. "Teacher Hana," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "I cannot find peace. I try so hard. I follow all the practices. I sit in meditation for hours, but my mind never stops. I cannot rest. I cannot sleep. I feel like I am failing at the most basic thing a monk should be able to do. What am I doing wrong?" Hana was quiet for a moment, watching a cherry blossom drift down and land on her knee. She picked it up gently, held it on her palm. "Tell me," she said softly, "did this blossom try to fall?" Kaito looked at the delicate pink petal resting so lightly on her weathered palm. "No, teacher. It just fell naturally." "Did it worry about falling correctly? Did it compare itself to other blossoms? Did it judge itself for the way it drifted down?" "No," Kaito said, beginning to understand something. "And yet," Hana said, her voice like water over smooth stones, "it fell perfectly. It landed exactly where it needed to land, not because it tried, but because it allowed. This is the nature of all things when we stop interfering with them. She let the blossom drift from her palm, and they both watched it settle onto the moss at their feet. "You are like this blossom, Kaito," Hana continued, her voice so gentle it seemed to blend with the evening air. "You are trying to fall correctly. You are trying to rest correctly. You are trying to be peaceful correctly. But peace does not come from trying. Rest does not come from effort. They come from allowing, from letting go, from trusting that you will fall exactly as you need to fall." She turned to look at him fully, her eyes holding such kindness that Kaito felt tears beginning to form. "You cannot force yourself to rest any more than you can force a blossom to fall in a particular way. Rest happens naturally when you stop fighting it, when you stop judging it, when you simply allow yourself to be exactly as you are right now." Kaito felt something inside him beginning to soften, like ice meeting warm water. "But teacher, my mind races. The thoughts never stop. How can I allow that? How can I rest when there is so much noise inside me?" Hana smiled. "The thoughts are also like cherry blossoms, falling through the sky of your mind. You do not need to stop them from falling. You only need to stop trying to catch every single one. Stop analyzing each one. Stop judging yourself for the ones that fall. Let them fall. Let them land. Let them be." She gestured to the tree above them where blossoms continued their gentle descent. "See how they fall constantly? The tree does not try to hold on to them. The tree does not worry that too many are falling. The tree simply allows them to fall in their season, knowing that this is natural, this is right, this is the way of things. Your thoughts will fall," she continued. "This is natural. This is not a problem. The problem is only when you try to grab each thought, when you believe each thought, when you identify with each thought as if it is the truth about who you are. Instead, let them fall like blossoms. Notice them if you notice them. Let them go as they go, and rest in the space that holds all the falling." That night, Kaito returned to his room with something he had not felt in months, a small seed of hope. When he lay down and the familiar cascade of thoughts began, he tried something different. Instead of fighting the thoughts, instead of judging himself for thinking, instead of trying desperately to make his mind be quiet, he simply let the thoughts fall. A thought about tomorrow's duties arose. He noticed it, a thought drifting like a cherry blossom. It lingered for a moment, then faded. Another thought appeared, a worry about something he had said earlier. Another blossom falling. He watched it drift through his awareness and dissolve. A memory surfaced, bright and detailed. Another blossom. He let it be, let it fall, let it go. Gradually, something remarkable happened. The thoughts were still there, still arising, but they no longer felt like problems to solve. They were just thoughts, temporary visitors passing through the vast space of his awareness. And in that space between thoughts, in the gentle allowing of each thought to be and then to pass, Kaito found something he had been seeking through all his effort. Not the absence of thoughts, but peace in the presence of thoughts. Not a mind that had stopped thinking, but a heart that had stopped fighting. Not perfect rest, but gentle rest, real rest, the kind that comes from allowing rather than forcing. Before he quite realized it was happening, Kaito drifted into sleep, the first real sleep he had experienced in weeks. He slept deeply and peacefully, his mind finally at ease, not because it had become silent, but because he had learned to let it be as it was. When he woke the next morning with the first light, he felt something he hadn't felt in so long he had almost forgotten what it was. Rested, truly rested, and he understood what teacher Hana had been trying to show him. Peace was not something to achieve through effort. It was something to allow through gentleness. Over the following days and weeks, Kaito practiced this new way of being with himself. When thoughts arose, he let them be like cherry blossoms falling. When worries came, he watched them drift through his awareness without grabbing onto them. When restlessness appeared, he allowed it to be present without judging it as wrong. Some nights sleep came quickly and easily. Other nights thoughts were more active, the mind more restless. But he no longer saw this as failure. He had learned that rest was not about having the perfect conditions, not about achieving the perfect mental state. It was about gentle allowing, about letting things be as they were, about trusting that he would fall exactly as he needed to fall. One evening, several months later, Kaito found teacher Hana again beneath the cherry tree. He sat beside her in comfortable silence, watching the blossoms fall in the twilight. After a while, he spoke softly. "Teacher, I wanted to thank you. You showed me something that changed everything. You showed me that trying to rest was preventing rest, that trying to be peaceful was preventing peace, that I could let go and trust and allow, just like the blossoms falling." Hana smiled, her weathered face creasing with joy. "You taught yourself, Kaito. I only pointed at what you discovered through your own practice, through your own gentleness with yourself. This is the only way real change happens, not through someone telling you what to do, but through your own tender discovery of what is true." She picked up a blossom that had just fallen beside her. "And now you know the secret. You are not separate from nature. You are nature. And just like these blossoms, you know how to fall, how to rest, how to let go. You only needed to stop interfering with your own natural wisdom. As you rest here now, breathing softly in the darkness, can you practice what Kaito learned? Can you let your thoughts fall like cherry blossoms, without trying to catch them, without judging yourself for having them? They will come, these thoughts. This is natural. This is not a problem. Let them drift through the vast sky of your awareness and rest in the space that holds all the falling. You do not need to make your mind quiet to rest. You do not need to achieve some perfect state of peace. You only need to allow, to let go, to trust that rest will come naturally when you stop trying to force it. Just like cherry blossoms falling when the season is right, just like sleep arriving when you finally allow it. Our second story takes us to a small village by the sea, where an old fisherman lived alone in a cottage so simple it held almost nothing. His name was Jin, and though he owned barely more than his fishing boat, his nets, and the clothes on his back, everyone who met him spoke of the profound contentment that seemed to radiate from him like warmth from a fire. A young woman named Suki lived in the same village, and though she had a comfortable home, though she had a good job and many friends, she felt a persistent restlessness that kept her awake most nights. She would lie in her bed, surrounded by things she had acquired, hoping they would bring her peace: soft pillows, beautiful linens, calming candles, but none of it helped. The restlessness remained, keeping sleep just out of reach. One day, Suki saw Jin sitting on the beach at sunset, simply watching the waves, and something about his stillness, about the ease in his weathered face, drew her to approach him. She stood nearby for a moment, and Jin looked up and smiled, gesturing for her to sit beside him on the sand. They sat together in silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in colors that seemed impossible, deep oranges and soft pinks and purples that defied description. Finally, Suki spoke. "Jin-san, may I ask you something? Everyone says you are the most peaceful person in the village, yet you have almost nothing. I have so much more than you, but I cannot rest, cannot sleep, cannot find the peace that seems to come so naturally to you. What is your secret?" Jin chuckled softly, the sound blending with the rhythm of the waves. "No secret," he said simply. "I just watch the ocean." Suki waited for him to say more, but he simply continued watching the waves rolling in and rolling out, in and out, the eternal rhythm unchanged by anything. "But surely there must be more to it than that," Suki pressed gently. "Some practice you do, some way of thinking, some technique for finding peace?" Jin turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the sunset. "Watch the waves with me," he said. "Really watch them, not thinking about them, not analyzing them, just watching." So Suki turned her attention to the ocean, trying to watch the way Jin watched. At first her mind was busy, commenting on what she saw, comparing this wave to that wave, wondering if she was watching correctly, thinking about what Jin might be trying to teach her. But gradually, as the sun sank lower and the colors deepened, something shifted. Her mind began to quiet on its own, not because she was trying to quiet it, but because the waves themselves were so mesmerizing, so constant, so endlessly fascinating in their simple repetition. Wave after wave rolled in, each one unique, each one the same, rolling in with a gentle rush, pausing for just a moment, then rolling back out with a soft sigh, in and out, in and out. The eternal rhythm that had continued for millions of years, that would continue for millions more, completely indifferent to whether anyone was watching or not. After a long while, Jin spoke again, his voice soft. Do you see how the waves do not try to be peaceful? They do not practice being waves. They do not worry about being better waves than they were yesterday. They simply are what they are, rolling in and rolling out, following their nature without effort or struggle. He picked up a handful of sand and let it drift slowly through his fingers. This is the secret. That is not a secret. Everything in nature knows how to be what it is without trying. The waves know how to wave. The sand knows how to be sand. The sunset knows how to set. They do not struggle. They do not compare themselves to other waves or other sand or other sunsets. They simply are. Suki felt something opening inside her, some tight knot beginning to loosen. And you're saying I should be like the waves? I am saying you already are like the waves, Jin replied gently. You already know how to rest, how to sleep, how to be at peace. It is your nature, just as waving is the nature of waves. But you have forgotten this natural knowing because you are trying so hard, because you are struggling so much, because you believe peace is something you must achieve rather than something you already are. He gestured to the waves still rolling in their eternal pattern. The waves do not stay awake at night worrying about whether they are waving correctly. They simply wave. You do not need to stay awake worrying about whether you are resting correctly. You only need to allow yourself to rest, to let go, to be what you naturally are when you stop trying to be something else. Suki sat with this teaching as the last light faded from the sky and stars began to appear, tiny points of light in the vast darkness. She felt something shifting inside her, some understanding that went deeper than words. But Jin-san, Suki said quietly, what about all the things I worry about? The responsibilities, the problems that need solving, the things I need to remember to do tomorrow. How can I just let go when there is so much that requires my attention? Jin smiled in the darkness. Do the waves stop waving when the wind blows? Do they struggle against the storm or worry about the next tide? No, they simply continue being waves, allowing everything to move through them without resistance. The wind comes and they rise higher. The wind goes and they settle lower. But always, they are just waves, being what waves are. He stood slowly, his old joints creaking slightly, and offered his hand to help Suki up. Your worries are like the wind. They come and they go. They are real, yes, but they are also temporary, changing, not as solid as they seem. You do not need to solve every problem before you can rest. You do not need to remember everything before you can sleep. The waves do not need perfect conditions to wave. They wave in storm and calm alike, always following their nature. As they walked back toward the village together, Jin added one more thing. Tonight when you lie down to rest, remember the waves. Let your breath be like the waves rolling in and rolling out, in and out, without effort or force. Let your thoughts be like the wind coming and going, rising and falling, but not stopping the natural rhythm of your breath. And let yourself be like the ocean, vast and deep and at peace beneath all the surface movement. That night, Suki lay in her bed and thought about the waves. She could still hear them in the distance, their endless rhythm carried on the night air. She began to breathe like the waves, letting her breath roll in naturally, pause for just a moment, then roll out softly, in and out, in and out. Thoughts came like the wind, just as Jin had said they would. Worries about tomorrow, memories from today, endless commentary and analysis. But instead of fighting these thoughts, instead of trying to make them stop, she let them be like wind passing over the ocean, coming and going, rising and falling, not stopping the deeper rhythm of her breath. And beneath all the thoughts, beneath all the worries, beneath all the surface movement, she found something she had forgotten was there. A deep stillness, a natural peace, the part of her that was like the ocean depths, unchanged by what happened at the surface, always at rest regardless of the storms above. For the first time in months, Suki fell asleep easily, naturally, the way waves wave and sand is sand and sunsets set, not because she had achieved some perfect state, but because she had remembered her own nature, had allowed herself to be what she already was, beneath all the trying and struggling. She slept deeply that night, rocked by the rhythm of her own breath, held by the vastness of her own being, at peace in the simple recognition that rest was not something to achieve, but something to allow, like waves rolling in and rolling out, following their nature without effort or struggle. In the days that followed, Suki returned often to sit with Jin and watch the waves. They would sit in comfortable silence, just watching, just breathing, just being. And gradually, the restlessness that had plagued her for so long began to ease, not because it was defeated or overcome, but because she learned to let it be like the wind, passing through without resistance. She learned that she did not need perfect peace to rest. She did not need a completely quiet mind to sleep. She only needed to remember her own nature, to trust the natural wisdom of her body and breath, to allow herself to be like the waves, following the rhythm that had been there all along, waiting for her to stop interfering with it. One evening, many weeks later, Jin and Suki sat watching another sunset paint the sky. "Thank you," Suki said softly. "You showed me something I had forgotten. That peace is not something out there to find, but something in here to remember." Jin smiled, his eyes on the waves. "The waves showed you," he said simply. "I only suggested you watch them. They are still the best teachers I know. They never complain about their work. They never worry about tomorrow. They just wave, endlessly, peacefully, following their nature. This is all any of us needs to do, follow our nature, which is to rest when it is time to rest, to be when it is time to be, to let go when it is time to let go. As you lie here now, can you feel your breath like the waves, rolling in naturally, without force or effort, pausing for just a moment at the top, then rolling out softly, gently, releasing completely, in and out, in and out. This rhythm has been with you since birth. It knows what to do. You do not need to control it or perfect it. You only need to allow it, to trust it, to let it carry you like waves carrying a leaf, effortlessly, naturally, toward the deep rest that is your birthright. Let your thoughts be like wind passing over the ocean of your being. They come and they go, they rise and they fall, but beneath them you remain vast and deep and fundamentally at peace, like the ocean depths that are never disturbed by surface storms. Rest in this depth now. Let yourself be carried by your own natural rhythm. Our third story takes us deep into the mountains, where winter snow falls so silently it seems the world itself is holding its breath. Here, in a small temple that few travelers ever found, lived a monk named Daichi, who had been carrying a burden for so many years it had become part of him, as familiar as his own shadow. The burden was not something he could see or touch, but it was heavier than any physical weight. It was the burden of his past, of things he had done before coming to the monastery, choices he had made that he could not unmake, words he had spoken that he could not unspeak, harm he had caused that he could not undo. Every night when Daichi lay down to rest, the memories would come like unwelcome guests, vivid and accusing. He would see the faces of people he had hurt, hear the words he wished he had never said, feel again the shame of who he had been before he found this path. And with the memories came a voice, relentless and cruel, telling him he was unworthy, unredeemable, forever tainted by what he had done. Sleep rarely came, and when it did, it was restless and filled with dreams that were more like accusations than rest. Daichi would wake exhausted, the weight of his past even heavier than before, convinced that he would never be free from the prison of his own history. One winter morning, after another sleepless night, Daichi was sitting in the meditation hall before dawn when the temple's eldest monk, a man named Ryokan, who was so old no one could remember when he had come to the mountain, entered and sat down beside him. They sat together in silence for a long time, and finally Ryokan spoke, his voice thin with age but steady as stone. "You carry something heavy. I can see it in the way you sit, as if the weight might crush you at any moment." Daichi felt tears spring to his eyes, all the defenses he usually kept in place, crumbling in the presence of this gentle old man. "I cannot forgive myself," he whispered. "I have done things, Ryokan-sama, before I came here. Things that hurt people. Things I am so ashamed of I can barely speak of them. I thought that coming here, practicing meditation, studying the Dharma, I thought it would wash away what I did, but it hasn't. The guilt only grows heavier. I cannot sleep. I cannot rest. How can I rest when I am so unworthy? Ryokan was quiet for a long moment, and then he stood slowly and gestured for Daichi to follow him. They walked through the temple and out into the snow-covered garden where a small pond lay frozen, its surface a perfect mirror of ice reflecting the grey morning sky. "Look at this pond," Ryokan said softly. "Yesterday I was here and I threw a stone into the water before it froze. The stone sank immediately, and ripples spread across the surface, disturbing everything, changing the reflection, creating waves that touched every shore." He pointed to the frozen surface. "Where are those ripples now?" Daichi looked at the ice, smooth and still. "They are gone." The water returned to stillness, and then froze. The ripples passed. "Yes," Ryokan said. "The stone is still at the bottom of the pond. The action happened. It was real, but the ripples, they passed. The water's nature is to return to stillness. It does not hold on to disturbance. It does not replay the splash over and over, keeping the ripples alive through memory. It simply returns to what it is still, clear, at peace." He turned to look at Daichi with eyes that held infinite compassion. "Your actions happened. They were real. People were hurt. These are facts, and they remain facts whether you carry guilt about them or not. But you, Daichi, you are like this water. Your nature is to return to stillness, to clarity, to peace. The ripples from your past actions have long since passed. The people involved have moved on with their lives. The circumstances have completely changed. Everything has transformed, except your grip on guilt, except your insistence on keeping the ripples alive through endless remembering, endless self-punishment." Daichi felt something beginning to crack inside him, like ice breaking. "But Ryokan-sama, if I let go of the guilt, if I forgive myself, does that not mean I am saying what I did was acceptable? Does that not dishonor the people I hurt?" Ryokan shook his head slowly. "Holding on to guilt does not help anyone. It does not undo what was done. It does not heal those who were hurt. It only ensures that there is one more person suffering in the world. You. The people you harmed have every right to their own feelings, their own process. But your self-hatred does not serve them. Your sleepless nights do not make their pain less. Your endless punishment of yourself does not change the past." He placed a weathered hand on Daichi's shoulder. "True responsibility for past harm is not self-hatred. It is honest acknowledgement of what happened, genuine remorse for the suffering caused, making amends where possible and where it would be helpful rather than harmful, and most importantly, transforming yourself so you do not repeat the patterns that led to harm in the first place." Ryokan paused, letting his words settle like snow. "But you cannot do this transformation work effectively while you are drowning in guilt and shame. Self-compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It is the foundation from which real change becomes possible. When we meet ourselves with kindness rather than cruelty, with understanding rather than judgment, we create the conditions in which genuine transformation can occur." They stood together in the snow, watching their breath form clouds in the cold air. "The Buddha taught that all beings deserve compassion," Ryokan continued. "Not all beings except you. Not all beings except those who have made mistakes. All beings, including you, especially you. You are not special in your unworthiness. You are not uniquely unredeemable. You are simply another being who has suffered and caused suffering, who is trying to find their way, who deserves the same compassion you would offer to anyone else." That day marked the beginning of a profound shift for Daichi. It was not sudden or dramatic. The guilt did not disappear overnight. The memories still came. But something had changed in how he related to them. When the memories arose now, he practiced what Ryokan had shown him. He would acknowledge them. "Yes, this happened. Yes, I caused harm. Yes, I feel genuine remorse." But then, instead of spiraling into endless self-punishment, into rehearsing all the reasons why he was unforgivable, he would practice letting the water return to stillness. He would feel the guilt as a sensation in his body, the tightness in his chest, the heaviness in his stomach, without adding the story about what it meant about his worthiness. He would acknowledge the remorse without making it into a life sentence. He would remember that the person who did those things was doing the best they could with the understanding they had at that time, and that he was no longer that person. He had changed, he had grown, he had transformed. Slowly, gradually, like ice melting in spring, the grip of guilt began to loosen. The memories still came, but they no longer destroyed him. He could remember without being consumed. He could feel remorse without drowning in shame. He could acknowledge his past without being imprisoned by it. And as the guilt loosened its hold, something remarkable happened. Sleep began to come more easily. Not perfectly, not every night, but more often, more deeply. When he lay down to rest, he could practice letting the water return to stillness, allowing the ripples of the day to settle, trusting that his nature was peace, that his being was fundamentally okay beneath all the surface disturbance. One night, many months after that conversation in the snowy garden, Daichi was lying in his small room when a particularly vivid memory arose. One of the worst things he had done, something that had haunted him for years. But this time, instead of the familiar cascade of shame and self-hatred, he felt something different. He felt compassion. Compassion for the person he had been, suffering and confused and acting from pain. Compassion for the people he had hurt. Compassion for everyone involved in that situation, all of them trying their best, all of them stumbling, all of them human, and in that moment of compassion, the memory lost its power to torture him. It became simply something that had happened, a fact of his history, no longer a weapon to use against himself. The water returned to stillness, the ripples passed, and he fell asleep held by a gentleness he had never allowed himself to feel before. The next morning, he found Ryokan again in the garden, sweeping snow from the path. Daichi stood watching for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Thank you, teacher. You showed me that forgiveness is not betrayal, that letting go of guilt is not forgetting what happened, that I could acknowledge my past without being destroyed by it." Ryokan smiled, his ancient face creasing with warmth. "You showed yourself, through your own practice, through your own courage to meet yourself with compassion. This is the only way healing happens, not through understanding concepts about forgiveness, but through actually practicing forgiveness, again and again, until it becomes more natural than punishment." He continued sweeping, the broom making soft sounds in the snow. "And now you know something precious. The water's nature is stillness. Your nature is peace. The ripples come and go, but they do not change what you fundamentally are. You can rest now. You can sleep. You can let the past be past and be fully present to this moment, which is the only moment in which you can ever actually live. As you rest here in this moment, is there something from your past that you have been carrying, some guilt or regret or shame that keeps you from peace? Can you practice what Daichi learned? Acknowledge that it happened. Feel genuine remorse, if that is what you feel, and then practice letting the water return to stillness. The past cannot hurt you anymore unless you keep bringing it into the present through endless remembering, endless self-punishment. You can let it stay where it belongs, in the past, as something that happened but is no longer happening. You can release the burden you have been carrying for so long. The water wants to return to stillness. Let yourself return to your natural state, which is peace, which is rest, which is the fundamental okayness that exists beneath all the ripples. You are worthy of rest. You are worthy of peace, not because you have earned it through perfect behavior, but simply because you exist, because you are here, because all beings deserve compassion, and you are a being. Let yourself rest now in this recognition. Let the water be still. Our fourth story takes us to a quiet village where there lived a woman named Yumi who had achieved everything she thought she wanted. She had a successful career as a potter. Her work sold throughout the region. She had a comfortable home filled with beautiful things. She had respect in her community, friends who valued her, a life that from the outside looked complete and enviable. But Yumi could not rest. Every night she would lie in her comfortable bed in her beautiful home, and instead of peace she would feel a gnawing emptiness, a sense that something essential was missing, even though she could not name what it was. She had checked every box on the list of what should bring happiness, yet happiness remained elusive, and sleep even more so. The emptiness grew worse as time passed. She would acquire new things, hoping they would fill the hollow feeling inside her. She would achieve new successes, thinking perhaps the next accomplishment would finally bring the satisfaction she sought. But nothing helped. The emptiness remained, and with it the sleepless nights, the restless turning, the exhausted dawns. One day, business took Yumi to a remote mountain town, and while she was there, she heard about a hermit who lived in complete simplicity in a small hut far up the mountain. People spoke of him with a kind of reverence, saying that though he owned almost nothing, he seemed more content than anyone they had ever known. Something drew Yumi to seek out this hermit. Perhaps he knew something she didn't, had found some secret to contentment that all her achievements had failed to provide. She made the long climb up the narrow mountain path and finally reached a clearing where a small hut stood, so simple it seemed barely more than a shelter from rain. An old man was sitting outside the hut, and when he saw Yumi approaching, he smiled and gestured for her to sit beside him on a rough wooden bench. They sat together in silence for a while, and Yumi found herself becoming uncomfortable with the lack of activity, the complete absence of the busyness that usually filled her life. Finally, she spoke. "Forgive my intrusion, but I heard about your contentment, and I had to come see for myself. I have so much, yet I feel empty inside. I cannot rest, cannot sleep, cannot find peace. You have almost nothing, yet people say you are deeply content. Please, can you tell me what I am missing?" The hermit smiled gently. "What are you?" he asked simply. Yumi was confused by the question. "I am a potter. I am a successful businesswoman. I am someone who has worked hard and achieved what I set out to achieve." "No," the hermit said softly. "Those are things you do, roles you play, identities you have built around yourself. But what are you beneath all of that? What are you before you became a potter? Before you achieved anything, before you acquired any possessions or any status?" Yumi tried to think of a better answer, but found herself at a loss. She had defined herself entirely through her accomplishments, her possessions, her position in the world. When she tried to find herself beneath these things, there was nothing she could name, a kind of emptiness that frightened her. "I don't know," she finally admitted, her voice small. The hermit nodded, as if this was exactly the answer he expected. "This not knowing is wisdom beginning to dawn. You have spent your whole life trying to fill an inner emptiness with outer things, achievements, possessions, status, recognition. But no amount of outer things can ever fill an inner emptiness, because you have been looking in the wrong place." He gestured to his simple hut, to the few possessions he owned: a bowl, a mat, a single change of clothing. "I own almost nothing, as you can see, yet I am content, deeply content, genuinely at peace. Not because poverty is somehow superior to wealth, not because deprivation is better than comfort, but because my contentment does not depend on what I have or do not have. It depends on knowing what I am beneath all the having and not having." Yumi leaned forward, desperate to understand. "But what are you then? What is this thing beneath all the achievements and possessions?" The hermit was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, "Close your eyes, just for a moment." Yumi closed her eyes. "Now," the hermit said softly, "notice that you are aware. You are aware of sounds. You are aware of the feeling of sitting here. You are aware of your breath. This awareness that knows all your experiences. What is it? Does it need to be a successful potter to exist? Does it need to own beautiful things to be here? Does it need any achievement or possession to be aware?" Yumi sat with this question, and slowly something began to dawn on her. The awareness that was present right now, that knew she was sitting here, that experienced this moment, it didn't need anything. It was just here, just aware, just present. It existed before she became a potter, before she achieved anything, before she acquired any possessions. This awareness, the hermit continued, this consciousness that experiences your life, this is what you truly are. Not the potter, not the achiever, not the owner of things. Those are temporary roles, temporary identities. But the awareness that knows all these roles, that experiences all these identities, this is your true nature. And this awareness is already complete, already whole, already at peace. "Open your eyes," the hermit said gently. Yumi opened her eyes, and found herself seeing the world differently, as if a veil had been lifted. The trees, the sky, the simple hut, everything seemed more vivid, more alive, more present. You have been trying to make yourself feel complete by adding things to yourself, the hermit continued. More achievements, more possessions, more recognition. But this is like trying to make the sky more spacious by adding clouds to it. The sky is already infinitely spacious. The clouds do not add to its spaciousness. They only obscure it temporarily. He smiled with such warmth that Yumi felt something in her chest loosen. You are already complete. Not because you have achieved anything or acquired anything, but simply because you are here, because you are aware, because consciousness experiences itself through your form. The emptiness you feel is not because something is missing. It is because you have been looking for completeness in things that cannot provide it. Yumi stayed with the hermit for the rest of that day, and he did not give her complex teachings or philosophical explanations. He simply invited her to be present to the life that was actually here, to the simple activities that filled the hours, drawing water from the well, preparing simple food, sitting in silence, watching the light change as the sun moved across the sky. At first, Yumi's mind kept wanting to be somewhere else, doing something more important, achieving something measurable. The simplicity felt uncomfortable, almost painful. Surely there was something more she should be doing, something more valuable, something that would finally give her what she was seeking. But the hermit would gently bring her back. You are drawing water, just draw water. You are sitting, just sit. You are breathing, just breathe. Stop trying to get somewhere, be where you are. As evening approached and Yumi prepared to make the journey back down the mountain, something remarkable happened. She was sitting outside the hut, simply watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. No agenda, no purpose, nowhere to be, nothing to achieve. And she experienced a moment of complete presence, a moment where all the seeking stopped. No thoughts about her business, no worries about whether she was successful enough, no measuring herself against others or against her own expectations. Just this, just being here, aware, alive. And in that moment, she touched something she had been seeking through all her achievements and acquisitions, a sense of fundamental okayness that did not depend on anything external. The moment only lasted perhaps a minute before her thinking mind returned with its familiar patterns of seeking and measuring. But it was enough. She had glimpsed what the hermit was pointing to, had tasted the completeness that exists beneath all seeking, had touched the peace that is our true nature before we cover it over with endless grasping for more. When Yumi stood to leave, the hermit walked with her to the path. Will you give up your business, your comfortable home, your possessions? He asked, not as a demand but as a genuine question. Yumi considered. I don't know if I am ready for that. I don't know if that is what I am called to do. The hermit nodded with understanding. I am not asking you to give anything up. I am asking you to stop depending on these things for your sense of being okay, for your fundamental peace. You can have success or not have success. You can have possessions or not have possessions. You can have comfort or not have comfort. But know that your true nature is complete, regardless. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. When you know this, really know it in your bones, then you can engage with the world of achievement and acquisition without being enslaved by it. You can enjoy success without clinging to it. You can face loss without being destroyed by it. You can live fully in the world while resting in the completeness that needs nothing from the world. Yumi returned to her life, to her pottery business, to her comfortable home. And from the outside, nothing changed. She still worked, still created, still engaged with her life. But inside, everything was different. She was no longer driven by the desperate need to fill an emptiness. She was no longer measuring her worth by her achievements. She was no longer believing that the next accomplishment would finally make her complete. When her work went well, she appreciated it without clinging to the success. When challenges arose, she met them without losing her sense of fundamental okayness. She had discovered something beneath all the surface activities of her life, a ground of being that was always okay, always complete, always at peace, regardless of external circumstances. And the restlessness that had kept her awake for so many years began to ease. Not because she had achieved more or acquired more, but because she had stopped believing that achievement and acquisition were the path to peace. She had found the completeness that was here all along, had touched the awareness that needed nothing, had recognized her true nature beneath all the temporary identities. Sleep began to come more naturally, more easily. When she lay down to rest, she could let go of the day's activities, let go of measuring her worth, let go of seeking something more. She could rest in the simple recognition that she was already complete, that this moment was already enough, that nothing needed to be added to make her worthy of peace. One night, many months after her visit to the hermit, Yumi was lying in her bed when a familiar feeling arose, that old emptiness, that sense of something missing. But this time, instead of panic, instead of immediately trying to fill it with thoughts about what she should achieve or acquire, she simply felt it. She noticed it as a sensation in her chest, a kind of spaciousness that her mind had always interpreted as lack, as something wrong that needed to be fixed. But now, resting in the awareness the hermit had pointed to, she recognized something profound. The emptiness was not a problem. It was space. It was the vast openness of awareness itself, the spaciousness that could hold all experiences without being filled or depleted by any of them. She had been trying to fill space with things, trying to make spaciousness into something solid and permanent. But space does not need to be filled. Space is already complete in its openness, already perfect in its ability to hold everything without grasping anything. Tears rolled down her face as this recognition deepened. She was not lacking anything. She had never been lacking anything. The emptiness she had felt was not absence but presence, not deprivation but the infinite capacity to experience, the vast openness of consciousness itself. She fell asleep that night with a peace she had never known, resting in the spaciousness that she was, held by the completeness that needed nothing, home in the awareness that had always been here, waiting for her to stop seeking long enough to recognize it. As you rest here now, can you sense into this completeness that is already here? Not as something to achieve or acquire, but as what you already are, beneath all the seeking, beneath all the measuring, beneath all the stories about not being enough. You are already complete. You have always been complete. This moment, exactly as it is already whole. Nothing needs to be added to make you worthy of rest. Nothing needs to be achieved to make you okay. Nothing needs to be perfected to make you complete. You are already enough. Let this recognition settle into you like rain soaking into earth. You are enough. You are complete. You can rest. Our fifth story takes us to a monastery where a young nun named Ayame struggled with a problem that made meditation feel impossible and sleep even more so. Her mind was never quiet. Thoughts arose in endless streams, cascading one after another, like water rushing over rocks. Constant and overwhelming, and seemingly impossible to stop. She would sit in the meditation hall with the other nuns, and while they appeared peaceful and still, her mind was a chaos of activity, planning, remembering, judging, analyzing, comparing, worrying. The thoughts never stopped, not for a single moment, and each thought felt like evidence of her failure as a practitioner. At night, the problem was even worse. She would lie in her bed trying desperately to quiet her mind so she could sleep, but the trying only made more thoughts arise. Thoughts about how she should be sleeping, thoughts about why her mind was so busy, thoughts about how everyone else could sleep but she could not, thoughts about thoughts, endless layers of mental activity that kept rest forever out of reach. One morning, exhausted and despairing after another sleepless night, Ayame approached her teacher, an old nun named Chie who had practiced for over 60 years. "Teacher," Ayame said, barely able to keep the tears from her voice, "I cannot quiet my mind. I have tried everything. I have tried counting breaths, watching thoughts, repeating mantras. Nothing works. My mind never stops. I feel like such a failure. Everyone else can meditate peacefully, can sleep easily, but I cannot. What is wrong with me?" Chie looked at her with eyes that held infinite kindness, eyes that had seen this struggle countless times. "Tell me," she said gently, "right now, in this moment, are you aware that thoughts are arising?" Ayame nodded, confused by the question. "Yes, of course. That is the problem. I am constantly aware of how many thoughts I am having, And this awareness that knows thoughts are arising, Chie asked, is it thinking? Ayame paused, genuinely considering this question. When she noticed that thoughts were arising, when she recognized that her mind was busy, there was a moment of awareness, of knowing, and in that moment, the awareness itself was not thinking. It was simply observing, simply knowing, simply present. No, Ayame said slowly. The awareness that knows I am thinking is not itself thinking. Chie smiled. This is the key you have been missing. You have been trying to stop thoughts, believing that successful meditation means having no thoughts, that peaceful sleep requires a blank mind. But this is not the path. This is suffering. You are at war with your own mind, and it is a war you cannot win. She gestured to the meditation hall around them. True practice is not about controlling thoughts or making your mind stop. It is about recognizing the awareness that knows all thoughts, the consciousness that witnesses thinking without being defined by thoughts. Your thoughts come and go like weather, sometimes many clouds, sometimes few, sometimes none, but the sky that holds all weather is never disturbed by any weather. Chie continued, her voice soft as falling snow. You are like the sky, Ayame. The thoughts are like clouds passing through. You have been identifying with the clouds, believing you are the thoughts, treating every wandering thought as a personal failure. But you are not the thoughts. You are the sky, the awareness in which thoughts arise and pass, the spacious presence that witnesses everything without being disturbed by anything. Ayame felt something shifting in her understanding, like a door opening to a room she hadn't known existed. So when I notice my mind has wandered, instead of judging myself, I should recognize the awareness that is doing the noticing. Yes, Chie replied. And more than that, recognize that this awareness is always here, always present, always available. Even when you are completely lost in thought, awareness is there. Otherwise, you could not eventually notice you are lost and return. Even in the midst of the wildest mental storm, awareness remains, like the sky that is still there even when completely covered by clouds. She paused, allowing this teaching to settle. When you sit in meditation, do not try to control thoughts or force your mind to be quiet. This creates tension, creates struggle, creates the very agitation you are trying to escape. Instead, rest in awareness. Notice thoughts arising, notice them passing, but do not become them. Do not add the thought, I should not be thinking, to the thoughts that are already present. Simply be the awareness that knows thoughts are happening, the way the sky knows clouds are present without being disturbed by them. Over the following days, Ayame practiced this new way, and it transformed everything. When she sat in meditation and thoughts arose, which they did constantly, endlessly, she no longer fought them. She simply noticed them as arisings in awareness. A thought about tomorrow appeared. She noticed it like noticing a cloud. A memory from yesterday surfaced. Another cloud drifting through. A judgment about her practice arose. Another cloud. She let them all be, let them all pass, resting in the awareness that witnessed everything without grasping anything. Gradually, something profound began to happen. She discovered that awareness was always peaceful, always spacious, always at ease, even when thoughts were chaotic, even when mental activity was intense. The storm of thinking might be happening in awareness, but awareness itself was like vast space that could hold any weather without being disturbed by it. And at night, when she lay down to sleep, she brought this same understanding. Thoughts would arise, worries about tomorrow, reviews of today, endless mental chatter. But instead of fighting them, instead of believing that she needed a quiet mind to sleep, she simply rested in the awareness that new thoughts were happening. The thoughts were like clouds passing through the sky of her mind. Sometimes many, sometimes few. But beneath them all, awareness remained, spacious and peaceful and unchanging. And in resting as this awareness rather than as the thoughts, sleep began to come more naturally, more easily. Not because her mind had become quiet, thoughts still arose frequently, but because she had learned that she was not the thoughts. She was the awareness in which thoughts appeared and disappeared, the sky that held all weather without being changed by it. One night, several weeks into this practice, Ayame was lying in bed when a particularly intense storm of thoughts arose. worries, plans, memories, everything churning at once. The old Ayame would have panicked, would have judged herself, would have spent hours fighting the thoughts and making them worse. But this Ayame simply rested in the awareness that knew the storm was happening. She did not try to stop the thoughts. She did not judge herself for thinking. She simply remained as the sky, vast and open and at peace, while clouds moved through in whatever patterns they moved. And something remarkable happened. She saw clearly, with a clarity beyond words, that awareness was completely untouched by the storm. No matter how intense the thoughts were, no matter how overwhelming the mental activity seemed, awareness remained spacious, peaceful, clear, unchanged. The storm was happening in awareness, but awareness itself was never disturbed. The next morning, Ayame went to Chi with eyes bright with recognition. "Teacher, I understand now. I have been trying to clear the sky of clouds, not realizing that I am the sky. The sky does not need to be empty of clouds to be the sky. Awareness does not need to be empty of thoughts to be awareness." Chie smiled with deep warmth. "Yes, Ayame. And now you know something essential about your true nature. You are not your thoughts. You are not your worries. You are not your restless mind. You are the awareness in which all these things appear and disappear. This awareness is always at peace, always spacious, always here. It is what you truly are." She placed a gentle hand on Ayame's shoulder. "Now you can rest. Not because your mind has become quiet, but because you know you are not your mind. You are the awareness that witnesses mind, the consciousness that experiences thinking without being defined by thoughts. And this awareness never needs to struggle, never needs to fight, never needs to achieve some special state. It simply is, always here, always peaceful, always home. As you rest here now, breathing softly in the darkness, can you practice what Ayame learned? Can you notice that you are aware? Aware of lying here, aware of breathing, aware of thoughts, if thoughts are present. This awareness that knows everything, it is not disturbed by what it knows. It is like the sky holding clouds, like the ocean holding waves, vast and spacious and fundamentally at peace. You do not need to stop thinking to rest. You do not need a quiet mind to sleep. You only need to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts arise and pass, the sky that holds all weather without being changed by it. Rest as this awareness now. Let thoughts come and go like clouds drifting across your inner sky, and remain as the vast spaciousness that is always here, always peaceful, always home. Our sixth story takes us to a village where there lived a craftsman named Takeshi, who was known throughout the region for the perfection of his work. He made furniture so flawless, so precisely measured, so beautifully finished, that people would travel for days to commission pieces from him. But Takeshi's pursuit of perfection came at a terrible cost. He could never rest, could never be satisfied, could never feel that his work was good enough. He would spend weeks on a single chair, measuring and adjusting, sanding and refinishing, starting over at the slightest imperfection. The work consumed him completely, and sleep became almost impossible as his mind endlessly reviewed every tiny detail, finding flaws where others saw beauty. One day, Takeshi's hands began to shake. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, a slight tremor when he held his tools at certain angles. He tried to ignore it, tried to work through it, tried to will it away. But the shaking gradually worsened, and his work began to show imperfections he could not control, could not correct, no matter how hard he tried. Takeshi fell into despair so deep it felt like drowning. His entire identity was built on being a master craftsman, on creating perfect work. If he could not create perfection, who was he? What was his value? The sleepless nights became even worse, haunted now not just by the pursuit of perfection, but by the terror of losing it. A traveling monk named Genzo came through the village and heard about Takeshi's suffering. He made his way to Takeshi's workshop and found the craftsman sitting surrounded by half-finished pieces, staring at his shaking hands with hatred and despair. "Show me your hands," Genzo said gently after introducing himself. Takeshi held out his hands, trembling visibly. "These hands have betrayed me," he said bitterly. "They were my whole life, my whole worth. and now they are useless, broken, worthless. Genso took Takeshi's shaking hands in his own steady ones and held them with tenderness, as if they were something precious. "These hands have not betrayed you," he said quietly. "They are simply changing. Everything changes. This is the nature of all things. Your hands were once a child's hands, small and clumsy. Then they became a craftsman's hands, strong and precise. Now they are becoming an elder's hands, shaking, less controllable. They have not betrayed you. They are simply being what hands are in this season of your life." He released Takeshi's hands and walked to one of the finished pieces, a cabinet with perfectly smooth lines and exquisite detail, technically flawless in every way. "This is beautiful," Genso said, examining it carefully. "But it is also cold. It is so perfect, it feels distant, untouchable, not quite human. It shows only your technical mastery, but nothing of your heart, nothing of your humanity." He picked up one of the half-finished pieces where Takeshi's tremor had created slightly irregular lines. "This," Genso said, holding it up to the light. "This has warmth. This has life. This has humanity. The marks of your shaking hands are not flaws but truth, not mistakes but honesty. They show that this was made by human hands, by a real person with limitations and struggles and beautiful imperfection." Takeshi felt anger rising. "You are being kind to spare my feelings, but we both know this is inferior work. These imperfections destroy the value of everything I do." Genso shook his head gently. "You have been creating perfection that is lifeless, and now life is forcing you to create imperfection that is alive. In Zen, there is a teaching called wabi-sabi, the appreciation of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. It recognizes that perfection is cold and sterile, that it is the irregularities, the marks of being made by human hands, that make something real, that give it character, that allow it to touch hearts." He sat down on the workshop floor, inviting Takeshi to join him. "Your perfect work was admirable, but it created distance. It said, 'I am perfect and you are not.' But this imperfect work invites connection. It says, 'I was made by human hands with all their limitations. I am imperfect like you. We belong to the same world of beautiful imperfection.'" Takeshi sat with this teaching for many days, feeling it work on him like water working on stone, slowly wearing away the rigid certainty he had built his entire identity around. He began to see that his pursuit of perfection had not been about creating beauty. It had been about proving his worth, about feeling valuable, about defending against the terror of not being good enough. He started working intentionally with the asymmetry and irregularity that his hands naturally created now, allowing the tremor to have its say in what emerged, accepting variations as part of the work rather than as failures to be corrected. He made chairs that were slightly uneven, tables that showed the texture of his shaking hands in their surfaces, cabinets with visible marks of his humanity. At first it felt wrong, like betrayal of everything he had worked for. But gradually something shifted. He found himself enjoying the process in a way he never had before. There was freedom in allowing imperfection, in not having to control every tiny detail, in letting the work be what it wanted to be rather than forcing it to match an impossible ideal. When he began showing this new work, reactions were mixed. Some people wanted the old Takeshi, the master of technical perfection, and they were disappointed or even offended by this new direction. But others were profoundly moved in ways they had never been moved by his perfect work. One person who purchased several pieces said something that stayed with Takeshi forever. "Your old work was beautiful in a way that made me feel inadequate," they said, running their hands over the irregular surface of a table. "It was so perfect that it made me feel my own imperfections more acutely. But these new pieces, with their visible marks of being made by shaking hands, they make me feel less alone. They remind me that imperfection is not failure. When I look at this table, I see that someone created something beautiful despite their limitations, and it gives me hope that I can do the same." Takeshi understood then what Genso had been trying to teach him. He had not lost his ability to create meaningful work. He had only shed a limiting belief about what made work meaningful. The perfection he had pursued for so long had been a prison, and his shaking hands had become the key to freedom. And as he let go of the demand for perfection, as he accepted his limitations, as he allowed his authentic humanity to show through his work, something else shifted. The anxiety that had kept him awake for years began to ease. He no longer lay in bed reviewing every tiny detail, judging every small imperfection, measuring himself against impossible standards. He could rest now. He could sleep. Because he had learned that his worth was not in his perfection, that his value was not in meeting some ideal, that he was enough exactly as he was, shaking hands and all. One night, lying in bed with his hands resting on his chest, feeling them tremble slightly even in stillness, Takeshi felt a wave of tenderness toward these hands that had served him faithfully his whole life. They had not betrayed him, they had simply changed. The way everything changes, the way everything must change, because change is the nature of existence. He fell asleep that night with tears of gratitude on his face, his imperfect hands held gently against his heart, at peace with the beautiful, messy, perfectly imperfect reality of being human, in a body that ages, in a world that changes, in a life that can never be controlled, but can be met with acceptance, with gentleness, with love. As you lie here now, can you practice accepting your own imperfection? Can you let go of demanding that you rest perfectly, sleep perfectly, be perfectly peaceful? Can you allow this moment to be imperfect, to include whatever it includes, without judging it as wrong or not good enough? You are beautifully, wonderfully imperfect, just like Takeshi's furniture that showed his humanity, just like every genuine expression of life itself. Nothing about you needs to be fixed before you can rest. Nothing needs to be perfected before you deserve peace. You can rest now, exactly as you are, imperfect and whole, flawed and complete, human and worthy. Let go of the demand for perfection. Let yourself be real, be here, be imperfect, and at peace. This is enough. You are enough. This moment is enough. Our seventh story takes us to a temple where a monk named Shiro had been following the rules and regulations with absolute precision for over 10 years. He was the model student, the perfect practitioner, someone who woke at exactly the prescribed time, meditated for exactly the required hours, followed every rule without exception. But Shiro was exhausted. The rigid discipline that was supposed to bring him peace had become a burden that grew heavier with each passing day. He felt imprisoned by schedules, suffocated by rules, trapped in a performance of what a good monk should be. And sleep became difficult because even in his dreams he was following rules, checking himself, making sure he was doing everything correctly. One day, a wandering monk named Teshin arrived at the temple. Teshin was famous throughout the region, though not for his discipline or strict adherence to rules. He was known for his freedom, his joy, his ability to be fully present to each moment without being bound by forms or schedules. Yet, masters spoke of him with profound respect. Shiro was assigned to attend to Teshin during his visit, and he was deeply skeptical. How could someone so apparently undisciplined, so lacking in rigor, be considered a true practitioner? Shiro was determined to show Teshin what real practice looked like through his own perfect adherence to form. That first morning, Shiro woke at the prescribed time and went to wake Teshin for morning meditation in the hall. But when he reached Teshin's room, he found the old monk already awake, sitting by the window, watching the dawn break over the mountains with such complete absorption that Shiro found himself stopping, his prepared words dying on his lips. Teshin was not in the meditation hall where he should have been. He was not sitting in the proper posture prescribed for Zazen. He was simply gazing at the sunrise with a presence so total, so complete, that the room itself seemed to hold its breath around him. "Master, Teshin," Shiro finally managed to say, unable to keep the judgment from his voice, "should you not be in the meditation hall?" Morning meditation is in the hall, sitting in proper posture, following the prescribed form. Teshin turned to look at him, his ancient face creasing in a smile that held no defensiveness, only warmth. "Ah, but I am meditating. I am sitting with the dawn. Is this not practice?" Shiro felt confusion rising. "But there is a schedule. Morning meditation is in the hall. This is how it is done. This is the discipline." And is the purpose of the schedule to follow the schedule? Teshin asked gently. Or is the purpose of the schedule to support awakening, to create conditions for presence? If I am already awake to this moment, already fully present to this experience of dawn breaking over mountains, what would sitting in the hall add? Would it make this moment more sacred? Would it make me more present than I already am? Shiro had no answer. Everything in his training told him that Tessin was wrong, that form mattered above all else, that discipline was essential. But something in the old monk's presence contradicted all of this. There was a quality of freedom, of genuine peace, of authentic awakening that Shiro had not encountered in all his years of rigid practice. Throughout that day, Shiro continued to be confused and somewhat scandalized by Teshin's behavior. During the work period, while other monks labored in disciplined silence, Teshin hummed quietly to himself, clearly delighted by the simple task of raking leaves. During meals, while Shiro ate with perfect neutrality, showing no preferences, Teshin openly expressed pleasure when he tasted something good, making small sounds of appreciation. That evening, Shiro could no longer contain himself. "Forgive me, Master Teshin, but I do not understand. You do not follow the schedule. You do not maintain rigorous discipline. How is this practice? How is this the path?" Teshin set down his tea and looked at Shiro with infinite kindness. "Tell me, Shiro, why do you practice so hard? What are you seeking? To achieve enlightenment," Shiro replied, as if this were obvious. "And do you feel free?" Teshin asked quietly. The question hit Shiro like a physical blow. He realized with devastating clarity that he did not feel free at all. He felt bound by rules, imprisoned by schedules, trapped by his constant measuring of his own performance. Every moment was filtered through whether he was doing it right, whether he was achieving his goal. "No," Shiro admitted quietly. "I do not feel free. I feel burdened." Teshin nodded with deep compassion. "This is because you have confused the finger pointing at the moon with the moon itself. The rules, the discipline, the schedule, these are tools. They point at freedom. But you have become so focused on following them perfectly that you have forgotten to look at what they are pointing toward. You have made the form into the goal itself, and so the form has become a prison rather than a path." He poured more tea. The simple act done with such presence, it became a teaching. "Let me tell you something about my own journey. In my early years, I practiced exactly as you do now. Rigid discipline, perfect adherence, constant measurement. I was the model monk. But I was also miserable, and I was not free." Teshin sipped his tea thoughtfully. "One day my teacher asked me, 'If you are practicing to be free, why are you creating more rules for yourself? If you are seeking liberation, why are you building more elaborate prisons?' This question shattered everything I thought I knew." He looked directly at Shiro. "True practice is not about following external forms perfectly. It is about being genuinely present, genuinely awake, genuinely engaged with life as it actually is. Sometimes that means sitting in the meditation hall because that supports presence. Sometimes that means watching the sunrise from a window because that is what presence is calling for. The form changes depending on what the moment calls for. What matters is not the external form, but the quality of presence, the depth of awareness." Teshin continued, his voice gentle but clear. "You follow the rules perfectly, but are you actually present when you sit in meditation? Or are you measuring yourself, judging yourself, congratulating yourself for sitting correctly? You eat mindfully according to the form, but do you actually taste your food? Or are you so busy being mindful that you miss the direct experience of eating?" Shiro felt tears beginning to form. Everything Teshin was saying struck at the heart of his practice. He had been so focused on the form that he had missed the point. He had been so busy trying to be a perfect practitioner that he had not actually practiced being present, being awake, being genuinely alive. "So what should I do?" Shiro asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Stop trying to be a perfect practitioner," Teshin said gently, reaching out to place a hand on Shiro's shoulder. "Start being a genuine human being who is committed to waking up. Use the forms when they serve awakening. Let them go when they become obstacles. The rules exist to serve you, not you to serve the rules." He paused, letting this teaching settle. But understand, this is not licensed to be lazy or self-indulgent. This is actually more demanding than rigid rule following, because it requires you to be genuinely present, to listen deeply to each moment, to discern what is actually needed. When you follow rules rigidly, you do not have to think, do not have to feel, do not have to be truly present. But when you are committed to genuine practice, you must be awake in every moment. In the months after Teshin left, Shiro's practice transformed completely. He still sat in meditation at the prescribed times, still followed the basic schedule, still engaged with the forms. But he did so from a different place. Not from fear of breaking rules, not from attachment to being seen as a good practitioner, but from genuine presence. And sometimes, when the schedule called for one thing but his deep listening called for another, he had the courage to trust his own awareness. One morning, he found himself drawn to watch the sunrise from the same window where he had first seen Teshin sitting. He sat with the dawn light, fully present, not judging himself for deviating from the schedule, just being here with this extraordinary, ordinary miracle of another day beginning. He experienced a quality of peace he had never touched in all his years of rigid discipline. Not because watching the sunrise was inherently superior to sitting in the hall, but because he was genuinely present rather than performing an idea of what practice should look like. And at night, when he lay down to rest, the difference was profound. He was no longer reviewing every moment of the day to check if he had followed every rule correctly. He was no longer judging himself for minor deviations from perfect form. He could simply rest, allowing the day to be complete, allowing himself to be enough exactly as he was. Sleep came more easily now, more naturally. Not every night, not perfectly, but more often, more deeply. Because he had learned that rest was not something to achieve through perfect discipline. It was something to allow through gentleness, through presence, through trusting that he would rest exactly as he needed to rest. Years later, when other monks came to Shiro, struggling with the same rigidity he had struggled with, feeling imprisoned by their own perfectionism, he would share what Tessin had taught him. The goal is not to abandon discipline, he would say with compassion born of his own experience. Discipline has its place. The goal is to find the discipline that comes from presence rather than from fear, from love rather than from obligation, from genuine commitment to awakening rather than from trying to be a good spiritual person. Stop measuring yourself against impossible standards, he would continue. Stop judging yourself for being human. The forms are meant to support you, not imprison you. Use them when they help. Let them go when they hinder, and rest in the recognition that you are already complete, already worthy, already home. As you rest here now, can you practice letting go of perfectionism? Can you release the demand that you rest perfectly, that you do this correctly, that you achieve some ideal state of peace? You do not need to be perfect to be worthy of rest. You do not need to follow any rules to deserve peace. You can simply be here, breathing, allowing, accepting whatever this moment brings. Let go of measuring, let go of judging, let go of performing. Just be, just breathe. Just rest in the simple recognition that you are enough exactly as you are, that this moment is enough exactly as it is, that nothing needs to be achieved or perfected or controlled. You are free to rest now. You are free to let go. You are free to simply be. Our 8th story takes us to a coastal village where a woman named Natsuki made her living as a weaver, creating cloth so fine and beautiful that merchants would travel great distances to buy her work. But despite her skill, despite the recognition her work received, Natsuki lived in constant anxiety about the future. What if her hands lost their dexterity? What if her eyesight failed? What if tastes changed and people no longer wanted her cloth? What if she could no longer support herself? The worries spun through her mind like threads on a loom, weaving patterns of fear that kept her awake night after night, staring into darkness, imagining every possible disaster. The lack of sleep made her work suffer, which created more anxiety, which made sleep even more difficult. She was caught in a cycle that seemed impossible to break, exhausted but unable to rest, worried but unable to stop worrying. One day, an elderly Buddhist nun named Kosen came through the village and stopped to watch Natsuki working at her loom. Kosen stood for a long time, observing how Natsuki's hands moved with practiced grace, how the threads came together to form intricate patterns, how something beautiful emerged from simple materials through patient work. "Your weaving is exquisite," Kosen said finally, "but I notice you seem troubled. Your hands are skilled, but your face is tight with worry." Natsuki looked up, surprised to have been observed so closely. Something about Kosen's gentle presence made her defenses drop, and before she quite meant to, she found herself pouring out her fears. "I cannot stop worrying about the future," she said, her voice trembling. "What if I lose my ability to work? What if I cannot support myself? What if everything falls apart? I lie awake every night imagining disasters, and I am so tired, but I cannot stop the worrying, cannot rest." Kosen nodded with understanding. "May I show you something?" she asked gently. She pointed to the loom where Natsuki had been working. "When you weave, do you weave tomorrow's cloth or today's cloth?" Natsuki was confused by the question. "Today's cloth, of course. I can only weave what is on the loom right now. And when you were weaving just now, before I interrupted, were you worried about the future?" Natsuki thought back to those moments before she had looked up and seen Kosen. When she was completely absorbed in her work, her hands moving in their practiced patterns, her attention fully on the threads, there had been no worry. The future had not existed. There had been only this thread, this moment, this simple act of weaving. "No," she said slowly. "When I am completely absorbed in the work, there is no worry." Kosen smiled. "This is because the future does not exist except as a thought arising in the present moment. When you are fully present to what is actually here, the loom, the threads, the weaving, there is no future to worry about. There is only this moment, and this moment is always workable, always manageable, always okay." She sat down on a stool near the loom. "You torture yourself with thoughts about a future that may never come. You spend your present moments suffering about imagined future moments, and in doing so, you miss the only moment you can ever actually live in, this one. And this moment, right now, are you okay? Do you have food today? Do you have shelter today? Can your hands weave today?" Natsuki looked around, really looked. She had food, she had shelter, her hands worked. In this actual present moment, not in some imagined future, everything was okay. The disaster existed only in her thoughts, not in reality. "But surely it is wise to prepare for the future," Natsuki protested. "Surely I should plan, should save, should protect myself against what might happen." "There is a difference," Kosen said gently, "between practical preparation and anxious worrying. Practical preparation happens in the present moment. You save some money today, you practice your craft today, you take care of your health today. These are present moment actions, grounded in what is actually here. But anxious worrying is living in an imagined future, suffering about things that are not happening and may never happen, missing the life that is actually unfolding right now." Kosen stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. "The waves do not worry about tomorrow's tide. The birds do not worry about next season's food. They engage fully with what is here now, and they trust that they will meet the next moment when it arrives, not before. This is not foolishness. This is wisdom. This is how life actually works when we stop interfering with it through anxious thinking." That evening, Kosen taught Natsuki a practice. "When you notice your mind spinning into future worries," she said, "bring yourself back to this simple question. Am I okay right now? In this actual present moment, not in some imagined future, but right here, right now. And if the answer is yes, if in this moment you have breath and food and shelter and the ability to meet what is actually here, then rest in that okayness. Let the future be the future. It will arrive when it arrives, and you will meet it then, not now." Natsuki began practicing this teaching, and it was harder than she expected. Her mind had spent years training itself to worry, spinning constantly into imagined futures, rehearsing disasters that had never happened and might never happen. But each time she noticed the worry arising, she would pause and ask, "Am I okay right now?" And almost always, the answer was yes. Right now, in this actual moment, she was okay. The disaster was not happening. The feared future had not arrived. There was only this breath, this moment, this present reality which was almost always workable and manageable and okay. At night, when she lay down, and the worries would begin their familiar parade through her mind. What if this? What if that? What if everything falls apart? She would practice the same question. Am I okay right now? And yes, right now she was lying in a comfortable bed. Right now she was safe and warm. Right now, in this actual present moment, she was okay. The future the worry spoke about was not happening. It existed only as thought, as imagination, as mental construction, and she could let those thoughts be like clouds passing through the sky, coming and going, while she rested in the okayness of this actual moment. Sleep began to come more easily. Not perfectly, not every night without any worry, but more often, more deeply, with longer stretches of actual rest, because she was learning to live in the present moment rather than in an imagined future, to meet what was actually here rather than suffering about what might be there. One night, several months after meeting Kosen, Natsuki was lying in bed when a particularly vivid worry arose, a detailed disaster scenario her mind had constructed. But this time, instead of getting caught in it, instead of following the thought into its dark imagining, she simply asked the question that had become her anchor. Am I okay right now? And she felt it deeply, not just intellectually but in her whole being. Right now, in this moment, she was okay. She was breathing. She was safe. She was held by this moment which was, in itself, complete and workable and enough. The future would come when it came, and she would meet it then with whatever resources she had then. But right now, she could rest. She fell asleep held by the present moment, by the okayness that is always here when we stop projecting ourselves into imagined futures, by the peace that exists not tomorrow or next year but right now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this simple fact of being alive. Months later, when Kosen passed through the village again, Natsuki invited her to tea. "Thank you," Natsuki said, pouring tea with steady hands, her face relaxed in a way it had not been before. "You showed me that I was spending my life suffering about a future that never comes, missing the life that is actually here. You showed me that this moment is always okay, always workable, always enough." Kosen smiled, sipping her tea slowly. The Buddha taught that all suffering comes from wanting the present moment to be different than it is. When we are here, fully present to what actually is, there is no suffering. The suffering comes from our thoughts about the past, our worries about the future, our resistance to what is present. But this moment, as it actually is always workable, always. She set down her cup. "You taught yourself this through your own practice. I only pointed at what you discovered, that peace is always available right now, not in some future when everything is perfect, but right here in this imperfect, uncertain, beautiful present moment. As you rest here now, can you practice what Natsuki learned? Can you ask yourself, am I okay right now, in this actual present moment? Not in some imagined future, not in some remembered past, but right here, right now. You are breathing. You are safe. You are held by this moment. The future will come when it comes, and you will meet it then. But for now, you can rest in the okayness of this present moment, which is always here, always available, always enough. Let go of the future that exists only in thought. Let go of worrying about what might happen tomorrow or next week or next year. Come back to this breath, this moment, this simple reality of being here now. You are okay. Right now, you are okay. Let yourself rest in this okayness. Our ninth story takes us to a monastery in the high mountains, where a young monk named Hideki struggled with a question that tormented him day and night, a question that seemed to have no answer, but would not let him rest. The question was simple but devastating. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why is there suffering in the world? Hideki had watched his beloved teacher fall ill and die in pain. He had seen innocent people harmed by natural disasters. He had witnessed cruelty and injustice that seemed to contradict everything he believed about the world being fundamentally good. And the question consumed him, kept him awake night after night, made peace impossible. If there was some cosmic order, some divine justice, some meaning to existence, how could such suffering occur? And if there was no order, no justice, no meaning, then what was the point of practice, of trying to be good, of seeking enlightenment? The question became a knot he could not untie, a puzzle that grew more tangled the more he tried to solve it. His teacher was an old monk named Genpo, who had practiced for over 70 years and who carried a quality of peace that seemed untouched by the world's suffering. One day, after Hideki had spent another sleepless night wrestling with his question, he approached Genpo in the garden. "Teacher," Hideki said, his voice raw with exhaustion and frustration, "I cannot rest. I cannot practice. I cannot find peace because I cannot answer this question. Why is there suffering? Why do innocent people suffer? If the universe is good, how can such terrible things happen? If there is no goodness at the heart of existence, why are we even practicing?" Genpo looked at him with eyes that had seen much suffering and had not looked away from any of it. "That is an important question," he said gently. "Sit with me." They sat together on a bench beneath a pine tree, and for a long time Genpo said nothing. Finally, he spoke. The Buddha was asked this same question many times, and do you know what he did? He refused to answer it. Hideki felt a flash of frustration. But why? Surely if anyone knew the answer, it would be the Buddha. The Buddha called these unanswerable questions, Genpo replied. Not because the answer is hidden or secret, but because the question itself is based on a false assumption. You are asking for an explanation that will make suffering make sense, that will fit it into some cosmic plan where everything has a reason. But suffering does not make sense. It does not have a reason that will satisfy your need for meaning. It simply is. He gestured to the world around them, to the mountains and sky. Earthquakes happen because of geological forces. Illness happens because of biological processes. People act cruelly because of their own suffering and confusion. These things happen not because they are part of some divine plan, not because the universe is good or bad, but because this is how the world works. Cause and effect. Conditions arising. Things happening because other things happened. Hideki felt tears of frustration forming. But that is so cold, so meaningless. If suffering has no reason, if bad things just happen randomly, how can we bear it? Genpo turned to look at him fully. You bear it the same way you bear a rainstorm. The rain does not fall because you deserve it, or do not deserve it. The rain falls because atmospheric conditions create rain. When you are caught in a storm, you do not stand there demanding to know why the universe is doing this to you. You find shelter. You wait for it to pass. You meet what is actually here, rather than tormenting yourself with unanswerable questions about cosmic justice. He paused, his voice becoming even gentler. The question you are really asking is not, why is there suffering? The question you are really asking is, how do I live in a world where suffering exists? How do I find peace when there is so much pain? How do I bear the unbearable? Hideki realized Genpo was right. The question about why was really a question about how to live, how to bear, how to find peace in the midst of suffering. And the answer to that question, Genpo continued, is not found in explanations or reasons, or cosmic meaning. The answer is found in presence, in compassion, in meeting what is actually here with an open heart rather than a demanding mind. When suffering arises, your own or another's, the practice is not to understand why it is happening. The practice is to meet it with compassion, to do what you can to ease it, to bear witness to it without turning away. He stood slowly, his old joints creaking. The Buddha did not teach that suffering makes sense or serves some higher purpose. He taught something much more practical. He taught that suffering exists, that it has causes, and that there is a path to the end of suffering. Not the end of all pain. Pain is part of life, but the end of the suffering we create through our resistance to pain, through our demand that the world be different than it is. Over the following weeks, Hideki practiced what Genpo had taught him. When the question arose, why is there suffering, he would notice it and gently set it aside, recognizing it as unanswerable, as a demand for cosmic meaning that would never be satisfied. Instead, he would practice being present to what was actually here. When he heard of someone suffering, instead of tormenting himself with why, he would ask, What can I do? How can I help? How can I meet this with compassion? Sometimes the answer was practical action, bringing food, offering comfort, sitting with someone in their pain. Sometimes the answer was simply bearing witness, allowing himself to feel the sadness without trying to explain it away or make it mean something. And gradually, something profound shifted. The unanswerable question that had tormented him for so long lost its power. He stopped demanding that the universe make sense according to his ideas of justice and fairness. He began to see that life simply unfolds according to causes and conditions, that suffering happens not because it means something, but because this is how a world of impermanent, interconnected, changing things works. His teacher had been right. The rain falls. Sometimes you get wet. The question is not, why did the universe send this rain? But how do you respond? Do you shake your fist at the sky, demanding explanations? Or do you find shelter, help others find shelter, and wait for the storm to pass? As Hideki let go of the need for cosmic meaning, as he stopped demanding that suffering make sense, something unexpected happened. He began to sleep again. The question that had kept him awake for months, spinning in endless circles, trying to solve the unsolvable, released its grip. He could rest now because he was not fighting with reality anymore, not demanding that the world be different than it was, not tormenting himself with questions that had no answers. One night, lying in his bed, Hideki felt a wave of grief for his deceased teacher. The sadness was real, deep, painful, but it was not mixed with the old question of why. His teacher had died because bodies fail, because all things are impermanent, because this is how life works. The grief was clean now, pure, not tangled up with unanswerable questions about cosmic justice. He let himself feel the sadness fully, let the tears come, let his heart break in the way hearts break when we lose someone we love. And in that broken open place, he found something he had not expected. Peace, not because the pain was gone, but because he was not fighting the pain anymore, not demanding that it make sense, not torturing himself with why. The pain was like rain falling. He let it fall. He let it soak through him. He let it be what it was. And beneath the pain, unchanged by it, was a deep stillness, a fundamental okayness that did not depend on the world making sense or life being fair. He could hold the pain and the peace together, could feel sadness and stillness at the same time. He fell asleep that night with tears still wet on his face, held by a peace that was deeper than explanation, wiser than understanding, more real than any answer to unanswerable questions could ever be. In the morning, he found Genpo in the meditation hall. "Teacher," he said softly, "I understand now. I stopped asking why and started asking how. How to meet this, how to bear this, how to live with an open heart in a world where suffering exists." And in that shift, I found peace. Not because suffering makes sense, but because I stopped demanding that it make sense. Genpo smiled with deep warmth. "Yes, Hideki, you have learned something essential. The world does not owe you explanations. Life does not owe you meaning, but you can meet whatever arises with presence and compassion. And in that meeting, you will find a peace that does not depend on understanding, a wholeness that includes brokenness, a rest that holds both joy and sorrow. As you lie here now, can you practice letting go of the need for everything to make sense? Can you release the demand that the universe explain itself to you? There are things in your life that may never make sense, suffering that may never have a reason that satisfies you. But you can still rest, you can still find peace, not because you understand everything, but because you have stopped demanding understanding as the price of peace. Let the unanswerable questions be unanswerable. Let the mysteries remain mysterious. Let the world be as it is, not as you think it should be. And rest in the simple fact of being here now, breathing, alive, held by this moment, which asks nothing of you except your presence. The rain falls. Sometimes it is gentle and nourishing. Sometimes it is harsh and destructive. You do not need to understand why. You only need to be here, meeting what comes with as much presence and compassion as you can muster. This is enough. You are enough. Rest now. Our 10th story takes us to a small village where there lived a fisherman named Koji who had spent his entire life by the ocean. He knew the sea intimately, every current, every hidden rock, every sign in the water that spoke of fish or storms. His knowledge came not from books but from decades of complete attention, from being fully present to the ocean day after day, year after year. A scholar from the city came to the village to study traditional ways of knowing, and he sought out Koji, having heard that the old fisherman possessed a wisdom that went beyond words. They met at dawn on the beach, and the scholar began asking questions, trying to extract some principle he could write down, some method he could teach to others. "How do you know where to fish?" the scholar asked, notebook ready. "What is your technique for reading the water? What philosophy guides your understanding of the ocean?" Koji looked at the scholar for a long moment, then simply said, "I do not have thoughts about the ocean. I just fish." The scholar pressed further, wanting more, wanting something he could capture in concepts and frameworks. But Koji only gestured to the water. "Come with me," he said. "Stop asking and just look." They sat together on the beach, and gradually the scholar's mind began to quiet. He stopped trying to analyze and understand, and simply watched the waves rolling in and out, the eternal rhythm unchanged by anything. And in that watching, in that simple presence to what was actually here, he began to understand what Koji meant. The ocean could not be known through thinking about it. It could only be known through being with it, through giving yourself completely to the direct experience of watching and feeling and sensing. This was a knowing that lived in the body, in the senses, in the whole being, not in concepts or frameworks or intellectual understanding. After a long silence, Koji spoke again. "The ocean teaches me everything I know, not through words, but through showing me, again and again, how she moves. She teaches me that you cannot control life, that you can only flow with it. She teaches me that everything changes, that holding on is like trying to hold water in your hands. She teaches me that the only way to be at peace is to accept what is and work skillfully with it." The scholar realized he was in the presence of a different kind of wisdom, one that could not be captured in notebooks or transmitted through lectures, one that could only be discovered through complete engagement with life, through presence rather than analysis, through being rather than thinking about being. "Can you teach me this way of knowing?" he asked. Koji smiled. "I cannot teach you by explaining. I can only show you what I do. Come with me each day and fish. Not think about fishing, not analyze fishing, just fish. Be completely present to the experience. And maybe after months or years of just being with the ocean with complete attention, you will begin to know what I know. But it will not be because I taught you with words. It will be because the ocean taught you by moving through you, as you rest here now. Can you practice this? Direct knowing, not thinking about rest, not analyzing whether you are resting correctly, but simply being rest, being stillness, being this moment exactly as it is. Let yourself know through your whole being, not through your thinking mind. Let yourself be like the ocean, vast and deep and at peace beneath all surface movement." Our 11th story takes us back to the monastery by the sea, where there lived a nun named Aya who had been practicing meditation for 15 years. She could sit for hours in perfect stillness, her concentration unwavering, her practice exemplary by every external measure. But Aya had a secret that filled her with shame she had never experienced. The profound peace she had heard other practitioners describe, had never felt the deep bliss of meditation, had never touched the enlightenment she thought should have come by now after so many years of dedicated practice. She began to believe there was something fundamentally wrong with her, some deficiency that prevented her from accessing the experiences others seemed to find so naturally. The shame grew heavier with each passing year, and it began to disturb her sleep. She would lie awake wondering what was wrong with her, why she was failing at practice despite doing everything right. One day, Aya gathered her courage and approached her teacher, an elderly nun named Chio who had practiced for over 50 years. With tears of shame, Aya confessed everything. "Teacher, I have been practicing for 15 years and I have never experienced the deep peace that others describe. I have never felt profound bliss. I have never had the breakthrough experiences I hear about. I must be doing something wrong." There must be something defective in me. Why can everyone else access these states, but I cannot? Chiyo listened with complete attention, her face showing no judgment, only compassion. When Aya finished, Chiyo was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked a simple question that would change everything for Aya. "Tell me," Chiyo said gently, "right now, in this moment, are you suffering?" Aya paused, checking in with her actual present experience rather than her thoughts about her practice. Right now, sitting with her teacher, being heard and seen, not performing or pretending she was not suffering. There was sadness about her perceived failure, yes, but in this actual moment, she was okay. "No," Aya said slowly, "right now, I am not suffering." And when you sit in meditation, Chiyo continued, when you are not comparing yourself to others or measuring yourself against some imagined ideal of what meditation should be like, when you are simply sitting, simply present, simply here in those moments, are you suffering? Aya thought back to her actual experience of sitting, when she was not caught in the story about how she should be having profound experiences, when she was not judging herself for not feeling bliss. There was actually a quiet simplicity to her practice, a basic okayness. Nothing dramatic, nothing earth-shattering, but also nothing wrong. Just sitting, just breathing, just being here. "No," she admitted. "When I am not judging my experience, there is no suffering. There is just sitting." Chiyo smiled with warmth. "This is what you have been missing. You have been so focused on trying to have special experiences, so caught up in seeking profound states, so busy comparing yourself to others, that you have missed the simple peace that has been present all along, not as a dramatic experience, not as blissful states, but as the basic okayness of simply being present without seeking anything." She reached out and took Aya's hand. The Buddha did not teach that enlightenment is about having special experiences or accessing altered states or feeling profound bliss. He taught that suffering ends when we stop creating it through our grasping, our aversion, our constant seeking for something other than what is here. You have been creating suffering by demanding that your meditation be something other than what it is, by believing you are defective because you are not having experiences others report. Chiyo paused, making sure Aya was really hearing this. But when you let go of seeking special experiences, when you stop comparing yourself to others, when you simply allow yourself to be present to what is actually here without demanding that it be more profound or more special, what do you find? Not suffering, just simple presence, just basic okayness, just peace that is not dramatic or blissful but is real and genuine and always available. Aya felt something cracking open inside her, some hard shell of belief about what practice should be like beginning to fracture. "So you're saying I have not been failing, that my practice has been fine all along?" "More than fine," Chiyo said firmly. "You have been practicing presence for 15 years. You have developed the capacity to sit in stillness without being swept away by every passing thought or sensation. You have learned to show up day after day regardless of whether you feel like it or not. This is profound practice. The only thing that has been missing is your recognition of its value, your acceptance of your own experience exactly as it is." She stood and walked to the window overlooking the ocean. "Some people do have dramatic experiences in meditation. This is fine, but these experiences come and go like everything else. They are not enlightenment. They are not the goal. They are just experiences, temporary states that arise and pass. The peace you have been seeking is not in some special experience. It is in the simple recognition that this moment, exactly as it is enough." In the days and weeks that followed, Aya's practice transformed completely. Though externally nothing changed. She still sat in meditation every day, still followed the same schedule, still engaged in the same practices, but internally, everything was different. She stopped seeking special experiences. She stopped comparing herself to others. She stopped judging her meditation as inadequate or herself as defective. She simply sat. And in that simple sitting, without the overlay of seeking and comparing and judging, she found the peace she had been looking for all along, not as a dramatic experience, not as profound bliss, but as the basic okayness of being present to what is actually here. Some sits were pleasant, some were uncomfortable, some were neutral, but all of them were okay when she stopped demanding that they be something other than what they were, and sleep began to come more easily, because she was no longer tormented by the belief that she was failing, that something was wrong with her, that she was deficient in some fundamental way. She could rest in the simple recognition that her practice was fine, that her experience was valid, that she was exactly where she needed to be. One evening, many months later, Aya was sitting in meditation when another nun who was struggling with the same issues she had once struggled with approached her after the session. "Aya-san," the young nun said hesitantly, "I have heard you have a deep practice, that you experience profound states in meditation. Can you tell me how you achieve these experiences? I've been trying for years, but I cannot access them." Aya smiled with recognition and compassion, seeing her younger self in this struggling practitioner. "I do not have profound experiences," she said gently. "I just sit. Some days the sitting is pleasant. Some days it is difficult. Some days it is neutral. But I have learned that this variety of experience is not a problem. It is just how practice is. The peace I have found is not in having special experiences, but in accepting whatever experience arises without judging it as good or bad, success or failure." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You are seeking something that is already here, not as a dramatic experience, not as profound bliss, but as the simple okayness of being present without needing things to be different than they are. Stop seeking special states and simply be here, fully present to this breath, this moment, this ordinary, extraordinary reality of being alive and aware." The young nun looked disappointed, clearly hoping for some secret technique, some special method that would unlock the experiences she sought. But Aya knew that this disappointment was part of the path, that letting go of seeking special experiences was itself the doorway to peace. As you rest here now, can you practice what Aya learned? Can you let go of seeking special experiences, special states, special anything? Can you simply be here, present to this moment exactly as it is, without demanding that it be more profound or more peaceful or more anything? This moment, exactly as it is enough. Your experience, exactly as it is valid. You are fine exactly as you are. Rest in this simple recognition. Our 12th story takes us to a village where there lived a man named Isamu who had achieved great success in his life. He had built a prosperous business, raised a loving family, earned the respect of his community. By every external measure, he had lived well, had accomplished what he set out to accomplish. But as Isamu grew older and began to reflect on his life, he was tormented by regret. Not regret for what he had done wrong, but regret for what he had not done at all. The dreams he had abandoned, the risks he had been too afraid to take, the life he might have lived if only he had been braver, more adventurous, more willing to follow his heart. These regrets kept him awake night after night. He would lie in the darkness thinking about the artist he might have become if he had pursued his painting instead of choosing financial security, the world he might have seen if he had traveled instead of staying close to home, the person he might have been if he had dared to be different from what was expected. The regret was a weight that grew heavier as the years passed, a sense of time running out, of opportunities forever lost, of a life half-lived, safe but small, successful but somehow incomplete. One day, a wandering monk named Zenkai came through the village, and Isamu, desperate for some wisdom that might ease his torment, sought him out. They met in a small tea house, and Isamu poured out his regrets, his voice thick with the grief of unlived possibilities. "I am haunted by the life I did not live," Isamu said. "I played it safe. I chose security over adventure, practicality over passion. And now I am old, and it is too late to go back, too late to choose differently. I lie awake at night, thinking about all the might-have-beens, all the roads not taken, all the dreams I let die. How do I find peace with this? How do I accept that I wasted my one precious life being cautious?" Zenkai listened with complete attention, then asked a question that surprised Isamu. "Did you love your children?" Isamu was confused by the question. "Of course I loved my children," They are the greatest joy of my life. And were you able to love them? To raise them? To be present to them because you chose financial security? Because you stayed close to home rather than wandering the world? Isamu had to admit this was true. His choice of stability over adventure had allowed him to be present for his family, to provide for them, to be there for every important moment of his children's lives. And your business, Zenkai continued. Did it allow you to support others, to create employment, to contribute to your community? Again, Isamu had to acknowledge this was true. His practical choices had allowed him to help many people, to create value beyond himself. So you chose one path, Zenkai said gently. And that path had its own beauty, its own gifts, its own meaning. Yes, there were other paths you did not take. There always are. Every choice we make closes off other possibilities. This is not a flaw in how you lived. This is simply how life works. To choose one thing is always to not choose countless other things. He poured tea for both of them, the simple act done with complete presence. You torture yourself by comparing the life you actually lived with an imagined life that exists only in your fantasy. But that imagined life is not real. It never was real. It is a story you tell yourself about what might have been if everything had gone perfectly, if you had been braver, if circumstances had been different. But you do not actually know what that life would have been like. Perhaps you would have been a struggling artist, bitter and poor. Perhaps you would have traveled the world and felt lonely and disconnected. Perhaps the risks you regret not taking would have led to disaster. Zenkai looked directly at Isamu with eyes that held both compassion and challenge. The life you actually lived was real. It happened. It had beauty and meaning and love in it. The life you imagine you should have lived is a ghost, a fantasy, a story. And you are choosing the ghost over the reality, the fantasy over what actually was. Isamu felt tears forming. But I feel like I wasted it. I feel like I played it too safe, like I was too afraid. You feel this now, looking back through the lens of regret, Zenkai said softly. But when you were making those choices, you were doing the best you could with the understanding you had at that time. You were not being cowardly. You were being responsible. You were caring for people you loved. You were making choices that honored your values, even if they were not the most adventurous choices. He paused, letting this settle. And even now, it is not too late. You are alive, right now. This moment is real, not imagined. What will you do with this moment? Will you spend it grieving the past, torturing yourself with might-have-beens? Or will you finally choose to be fully present to the life you actually have, to see its beauty and meaning, to honor the choices you made instead of condemning them? Isamu sat with this teaching as the afternoon light faded and evening came. He began to see that his regret was not really about the past at all. It was about not being present to his life as it actually was, about living in fantasy rather than reality, about refusing to accept that every life involves choices and every choice involves letting go of other possibilities. That night, when the familiar regrets arose as he lay in bed, he practiced what Zenkai had taught him. Instead of following the thoughts into their spiral of might-have-beens, he brought himself back to reality. He thought about his children, whom he loved deeply and had been able to be present for because of his choices. He thought about the people his business had employed and supported over the years. He thought about the quiet satisfaction of building something stable and lasting. His life had not been dramatic or adventurous, but it had been real. It had been lived with love and care and responsibility. And there was beauty in that, meaning in that, even if it was not the life he sometimes fantasized he should have lived. For the first time in years, Isamu felt something shift. A softening toward himself, toward his choices, toward the life he had actually lived rather than the fantasy life he had not lived. He had done his best. He had loved. He had cared. He had built something of value. This was not wasted. This was a life, real and complete in its own way. He fell asleep that night with a peace he had not felt in a long time, resting not in fantasy but in reality, not in regret but in acceptance, not in what might have been but in what actually was. The next morning, Isamu sought out Zenkai before the monk left the village. "Thank you," he said simply. "You showed me that I was choosing ghosts over reality, fantasy over what actually is. You showed me that my life had meaning, even if it was not the life I sometimes imagined I should have lived." Zenkai smiled. "Every life is complete in its own way when we stop comparing it to imagined alternatives. The regret you felt was not about your actual life. It was about refusing to accept your life, refusing to see its beauty and meaning, choosing to live in fantasy rather than in reality. Now you can rest. Now you can be at peace. Not because your life was perfect, but because it was real, and real is enough. As you rest here now, can you let go of comparing your life to imagined alternatives? Can you release the regret for roads not taken, dreams not pursued, choices made differently? Every choice involves letting go of other possibilities. This is not failure. This is simply how life works. The life you have actually lived is real. It has meaning. It is enough. Rest in this recognition. Let the ghosts of unlived lives dissolve. Be present to what actually is. Our 13th story takes us to a temple where there lived a monk named Satoru who had spent 20 years in practice, and in all that time he had followed every teaching perfectly, studied every text diligently, practiced every meditation technique correctly. But despite all this knowledge, despite all this effort, he felt no closer to enlightenment than when he had begun. The more he learned, the more confused he became. Different teachers said different things. Different texts contradicted each other. Different traditions emphasized different practices. Satoru had filled his mind with so much spiritual knowledge that he could barely think straight anymore, could barely sleep for all the different teachings competing for attention in his consciousness. One day, in complete frustration, Satoru went to the abbot of his temple, a very old monk named Hakuin, who rarely spoke but who carried a quality of clarity that cut through confusion like sunlight through fog. "Teacher," Satoru said, spreading out before Hakuin the dozens of books he had studied, the notes he had taken, the practices he had learned. "I have studied all of this. I know the different schools of Buddhism. I know the different meditation techniques. I know the philosophical positions and the historical debates. But I feel more confused than ever. How do I know which teaching is right? Which practice should I follow? Which path leads to enlightenment?" Hakuin looked at the pile of books and notes, then looked at Satoru with eyes that seemed to see through everything. "Stand up," Hakuin said simply. Satoru stood, confused. "Walk to the door," Hakuin instructed. Satoru walked to the door, still not understanding. "Come back and sit down," Hakuin said. Satoru returned and sat, waiting for the teaching, for the explanation of what this exercise had meant. "When you walked to the door," Hakuin asked, "did you need to consult all these books? Did you need to know the different Buddhist theories about walking? Did you need to understand the philosophical positions on movement?" "No, teacher," Satoru replied. "I just walked, and yet you walked perfectly," Hakuin said with a slight smile. "Your body knew how to walk. Your legs knew how to move. You did not need all this knowledge to do what your body already knows how to do." He gestured to the pile of books. "All this knowledge, all these teachings, all these practices, they are like instruction manuals for walking, given to someone who already knows how to walk. They are fingers pointing at the moon. But you have become so busy studying the fingers, comparing the fingers, analyzing which finger is pointing more correctly, that you have forgotten to look at the moon." Hakuin stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains. The Buddha nature that all these texts speak about, the enlightenment that all these practices point toward, it is not something you need to acquire through accumulating knowledge. It is what you already are beneath all the knowledge, beneath all the confusion, beneath all the seeking. It is as natural to you as walking, as breathing, as being alive. He turned back to Satoru. "You have spent 20 years filling your mind with knowledge about enlightenment. Now I invite you to spend the next 20 years emptying your mind of all that knowledge, returning to the simple direct experience of being alive, of being present, of being what you already are, before any teaching was learned, before any practice was attempted." Satoru felt something breaking open in him. some knot of confusion beginning to untie. "But teacher, what about all this study? Was it wasted?" "Not wasted," Hakuin replied gently. "But perhaps the value was not in the knowledge itself, but in bringing you to this point of recognizing that knowledge alone cannot provide what you seek. You have learned everything you can learn. Now you can unlearn, can let go, can return to the simplicity that was here all along, before all the learning complicated it." In the days that followed, Satoru began a practice of unlearning. When complicated teachings arose in his mind, he would let them go. When debates about Buddhist philosophy appeared, he would release them. When the urge came to analyze and compare and understand, he would gently return to simple presence. He began to live more like the animals and trees and clouds, not thinking about being alive, just being alive, not analyzing experience, just experiencing, not seeking enlightenment, just being what he already was beneath all the seeking. And sleep began to come more easily, because his mind was no longer so crowded with competing teachings and philosophical positions and different practices to master. He could rest in simplicity, in not knowing, in the vast spaciousness that exists before the mind fills it with knowledge. One night, several months into this practice of unlearning, Satoru was lying in bed when his mind tried to engage with a complex philosophical question about the nature of emptiness that he had studied for years. But instead of following the thought into its elaborate reasoning, instead of trying to understand or solve or analyze, he simply let it be like a cloud passing through the sky of his awareness. And in the space where that thought had been, where usually another thought would immediately arise to replace it, there was just space, just awareness, just the simple fact of being here, breathing, alive, present, not complicated by knowledge, not obscured by learning, not confused by competing teachings. Just this. He recognized in that moment what Hakuin had been pointing to. Enlightenment was not something he would achieve by accumulating more knowledge or mastering more practices. It was what remained when he let go of all the knowledge, all the practices, all the seeking. It was the simple awareness that had been here all along, before he learned anything about Buddhism, before he started practicing, before he began seeking. The next morning, Satoru went to Hakuin and simply bowed deeply. No words needed. Hakuin nodded with recognition and warmth, seeing that Satoru had finally looked at the moon instead of studying the fingers pointing at it. "Now your real practice begins," Hakuin said quietly. "Not the practice of accumulating knowledge, but the practice of living from this simple awareness, of returning again and again to what you are beneath all the learning, of being the walking instead of thinking about how to walk. As you rest here now, can you practice this unlearning? Can you let go of all the knowledge you have accumulated about how to rest, about what peace should feel like, about the right way to be in this moment? Can you return to the simplicity of just being here, just breathing, just present, without all the complicated teachings and techniques and ideas about how this should be? You already know how to rest, just like you know how to walk, just like you know how to breathe. You do not need to learn it from any teaching. You only need to stop interfering with what your body and being already know how to do. Let go of the knowledge. Return to the simplicity. Just be here. Just this. Just now. Our final story takes us back to where we began, to a quiet monastery where cherry blossoms fall and the sound of a bell marks the passage of time. Here, all the monks we have met in our journey tonight gather together in the meditation hall one last evening as the sun sets and darkness gently comes. Kaito is here, the one who learned to let thoughts fall like cherry blossoms without trying to catch them. Suki is here, the one who learned from the ocean's waves to trust her own natural rhythm. Daichi is here, the one who learned to let the water return to stillness, releasing the past. Yumi is here, the one who discovered completeness, not in achievement, but in simple awareness. Ayame sits nearby, the one who learned she was the sky holding all thoughts like clouds. Takeshi is present, his hands still trembling slightly, but his heart at peace with imperfection. Shiro is here, freed from rigid rules and resting in genuine presence. Natsuki sits with them, released from worry about the future, anchored in now. Hideki is here, no longer tormented by unanswerable questions. Aya rests among them, at peace with her ordinary practice. Isamu has joined them, having made peace with the life actually lived rather than the life imagined. And Satoru sits in the simplicity beyond all his accumulated knowledge. They sit together in silence as evening deepens into night, and though they are many individuals, they are also one awareness experiencing itself through many forms, one presence breathing through many bodies, one peace expressing itself in countless ways. In this gathering, there is no teacher and student, no success and failure, no enlightened and unenlightened. There is only presence, only awareness, only the simple miracle of being alive in this moment, together in the vast mystery of existence. The bell rings softly, marking the end of the evening meditation, but no one moves. They continue sitting as darkness fills the hall, as the world outside settles into night, as everything becomes still and quiet, and held by the gentle embrace of the present moment. You are with them now, part of this gathering, breathing the same breath, resting in the same awareness, held by the same peace. All the teachings they learned, all the struggles they moved through, all the freedom they discovered, this is available to you too. Not because you must achieve what they achieved, but because you are what they are, awareness itself, temporarily appearing as this particular human being, this particular story, this particular journey through time. And now, as our journey together comes to its gentle close, as all the stories have been told and all the teachings shared, there is nothing left to do but rest. Nothing left to achieve, nothing left to understand, nothing left to become. You can simply be here, breathing softly in the darkness, held by this moment that asks nothing and offers everything. Let your body sink even deeper now. Feel how heavy it has become, how completely relaxed, how thoroughly at ease. Every muscle has released its tension. Every cell has softened. Your whole being has surrendered into the support beneath you, trusting completely that you are held, that you are safe, that you can let go of everything. Your breath continues its gentle rhythm, so soft now, so quiet, barely a whisper of movement. In and out, like waves on a distant shore, like cherry blossoms falling, like the natural rhythm of existence itself flowing through you without any effort or control. You do not need to breathe, you are being breathed. Life is living itself through you. All the teachings you have received tonight have planted seeds in the fertile soil of your consciousness. You do not need to remember them, do not need to hold on to them, do not need to understand them or figure out how to apply them. They will grow in their own time, in their own way, according to their own nature. They will emerge when you need them, will offer themselves when the moment calls for them. For now, let them rest as you rest. Let them dissolve into the vast spaciousness of your awareness, like salt dissolving into the ocean, becoming part of you without you having to do anything, without you having to try or work or make it happen. Just resting, just allowing, just being. You learned tonight about letting go of seeking, about resting in awareness, about accepting imperfection, about forgiving yourself, about releasing the future and the past, about being present to what actually is. All of these teachings point to the same truth, that peace is not somewhere else, not in some future when everything is perfect, but here now in this moment when you stop demanding that things be different. And in this moment, right now, you can touch that peace, not as an achievement, not as something you have earned through listening well or practicing correctly, but simply as what is here when all the striving stops, when all the seeking ends, when all the fighting with reality ceases. Feel it now. This peace that is always present beneath the surface of your thoughts and worries and plans. It is like the ocean depths that are always still, no matter what storms rage at the surface. It is like the sky that always holds all weather without being disturbed by any weather. It is like the awareness that witnesses all experiences without being changed by any experience. This peace is what you are, not what you will become through practice, not what you might achieve through effort, but what you already are right now, in this moment, exactly as you are, complete, whole, enough, at rest. Let yourself dissolve into this peace now, the way a drop of water dissolves into the ocean, the way a breath of air dissolves into the sky, the way a single note dissolves into silence. You are not losing yourself, you are finding yourself. You are not disappearing. You are becoming everything. The boundary between you and the darkness around you is softening, becoming more permeable, easier to cross. Where do you end and the darkness begin? Where does your awareness end and the vast awareness that holds all things begin? The separation was always an illusion, a story, a belief. In truth, you are not separate from anything. You have never been separate. You are the darkness and the light, the silence and the sound, the one experiencing and the experience itself. Rest in this recognition now. Let the small sense of self dissolve like mist in morning sunlight. Let the boundaries soften and disappear. Let yourself be held by something so much vaster than your individual story, so much more spacious than your personal concerns, so much more eternal than your temporary form. You are the awareness that was here before this body was born and will be here after this body dissolves. You are the consciousness that experiences all experiences, but is not limited to any experience. You are the presence that is always now, always here, always home. And from this recognition, sleep becomes not an escape from consciousness, but a return to source, a dissolving of the temporary form back into the formless, a release of the particular back into the universal. When you sleep deeply tonight, you will rest in this formless awareness, this consciousness prior to all thoughts and dreams, this pure being that is your deepest nature. Tomorrow you will wake, and the form will reassemble. The person will return with their name and history and responsibilities. The story will continue, but somewhere deep inside, you will remember. You will carry this recognition like a seed that will slowly grow, slowly transform how you meet your life, slowly change everything while changing nothing. The night surrounds you now like the softest embrace, dark and gentle and infinitely patient. There is no rush, no urgency, nowhere you need to be except exactly where you are. Time has slowed to a whisper, and in this slowed down space, you can feel how completely you are held, how thoroughly you are supported, how perfectly you are safe. Your body knows how to rest. It has been waiting for this, longing for this, preparing for this moment when you finally give it permission to completely let go. Every system in your body is designed to heal and renew during sleep, to release what no longer serves, to restore what has been depleted, to return to balance. Let your body do what it knows how to do. Let it sink deeper into rest with each breath. Let it release the last remnants of tension that might still be hiding in your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. Just let them soften, let them melt, let them become so heavy they feel like they could sink right through whatever is supporting you. Your mind, which has been so busy throughout this journey, listening to stories, absorbing teachings, following the gentle thread of these words, your mind can rest now too. It has worked enough. It has done its job. It can release its vigilance, its constant monitoring, its need to understand and figure out and make sense of everything. Thoughts will still arise. This is natural, but they are becoming slower, more spacious, less sticky. Like clouds drifting across a vast sky, they appear, linger for a moment, and dissolve back into the emptiness from which they came. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to engage with them. They are just thoughts, temporary visitors passing through, and you can let them pass. Between the thoughts, notice the space. Notice the silence. Notice the awareness that is always here, always present, always at peace. This awareness is like the canvas on which all experiences are painted. The experiences come and go, thoughts, sensations, sounds, all arising and passing, but the canvas remains, unchanging, unlimited, infinitely spacious. You are this canvas. You are this awareness, not the passing experiences, but the unchanging presence that knows all experiences. And this awareness has no problems, no worries, no fears. It simply is, always here, always now, always home. Rest as this awareness now. Let everything else fall away. Let the stories about who you are dissolve. Let the memories of the day fade. Let the plans for tomorrow release their grip. Let even the sense of being a person in a particular place at a particular time soften and become less defined. What remains? What is here when everything else falls away? Simply this, simply presence, simply the awareness of being aware, the consciousness of consciousness, the light that illuminates all experience without being touched by any experience. This is what the Buddha was pointing to when he spoke of emptiness. Not a void, not a nothingness, but an infinite spaciousness that contains everything while grasping nothing. The emptiness is not empty of presence, it is empty of limitation, empty of boundary, empty of separation. You are this emptiness. You are this spaciousness, vast and open and free. And in this spaciousness, there is perfect peace. Not because you have achieved something or figured something out or become someone different, but because this spaciousness is your true nature. What you have always been beneath all the stories and identities and temporary forms. Sleep will come from this place of spaciousness, this place of no effort, this place of complete allowing. You do not need to make it happen. You do not need to try to fall asleep. Sleep comes naturally when you stop interfering, when you stop trying, when you simply allow yourself to be exactly as you are in this moment. And if sleep does not come immediately, this is also okay. You can rest in the spaciousness, even while awake. You can be at peace, even if thoughts continue. You can be still, even if the body has sensations, because peace is not dependent on any particular state. It is what you are beneath all states, before any state arises, after all states pass. Feel yourself being held now by something so much larger than yourself. Call it the universe, call it consciousness, call it the eternal presence, call it God or Buddha nature, or simply this. Whatever name you give it, feel how completely it holds you, how perfectly it supports you, how infinitely it accepts you exactly as you are. You do not need to earn this holding. You do not need to deserve this acceptance. It is already here, already given, already complete. You are already held, already accepted, already loved beyond measure. Not for what you do or what you achieve or how perfect you are, but simply for being, simply for existing, simply for being this particular precious expression of the infinite in finite form. Let yourself be held now. Let yourself be loved. Let yourself be completely, utterly, totally accepted. There is nothing wrong with you. There has never been anything wrong with you. You are perfect in your imperfection, complete in your incompleteness, whole in your brokenness. The darkness around you is not empty but full, pregnant with possibility, rich with the presence of pure being. In some traditions, they speak of this darkness as the womb of creation, the fertile void from which all things arise and to which all things return. You are resting in this womb now, safe and held and perfectly at home. Your breathing has become so subtle now, so gentle, that you can barely sense its movement. The rise and fall of your chest is like the tide moving in the deep ocean, so slow and rhythmic that it seems eternal, as if it has always been happening and will always continue, connecting you to the vast pulse of life itself. With each exhale, let yourself release a little more. Let go of the day that has passed. Let go of any remaining tension in your body. Let go of any lingering thoughts in your mind. Let go of any sense of needing to be anywhere else, anyone else, anything else. Just breathe out and let it all go, like leaves falling from trees in autumn, returning to the earth, completing the cycle. And with each inhale, receive. Receive the gift of this breath. Receive the gift of this moment. Receive the gift of being alive right now. Conscious, aware, here. You do not need to do anything with what you receive. Just receive it. Let it fill you. Let it nourish you. Let it remind you that you are supported, that life is flowing through you, that you are part of something infinitely larger than yourself. The monks in our stories tonight, each one found their way to peace by letting go of something they had been gripping tightly. Kaito let go of trying to control his thoughts. Suki let go of restlessness and trusted her natural rhythm. Daichi let go of guilt and self-punishment. Yumi let go of seeking completeness in external things. Ayame let go of identifying with her busy mind. Takeshi let go of perfectionism. Shiro let go of rigid discipline. Natsuki let go of worrying about the future. Hideki let go of demanding that suffering makes sense. Aya let go of comparing herself to others. Isamu let go of regret for the unlived life. Satoru let go of all his accumulated knowledge. Each of them let go of something different, but they all found the same thing: peace. Not because they achieved something new, but because they released what was preventing them from recognizing the peace that was already there, already present, already available. What are you holding on to that you could let go of now? What burden have you been carrying that you could set down? What demand are you making of this moment that you could release? You do not need to figure this out or analyze it. Just feel into it. Is there something in you that wants to be released? Something that is ready to be let go? If you sense something, just breathe it out. Imagine it flowing out with your exhale, leaving your body, returning to the earth, dissolving into the air. You do not need to push it away or fight with it. Just gently, tenderly, lovingly let it go. The way you might open your hand and let a bird fly free. And if you do not sense anything in particular, that is perfectly fine too. Just rest in the gentle rhythm of your breathing, in the soft darkness surrounding you, in the vast spaciousness of your own awareness. Everything is already perfect, exactly as it is. The Buddha's final teaching, his very last words before he died, were, "All compounded things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence." He was reminding his disciples that everything in form is temporary, that this body will age and eventually return to dust, that every circumstance will change, that nothing we can grasp will last forever. But he was also pointing to something that does not decay, something that is not compounded, something that remains regardless of what changes. The awareness that looks through your eyes right now, the consciousness that experiences this moment. This is not personal. It does not belong to you. You belong to it. And it is eternal, unborn, undying, beyond all coming and going, beyond all change and decay. It was here before this body formed. It will be here after this body dissolves. It is the constant background of all experience, the unchanging witness of all change, the deathless presence that holds all life and death. Tonight you do not need to understand this intellectually. You do not need to grasp it with your mind. You can simply rest in it, be held by it, allow yourself to dissolve into it like salt dissolving into the ocean, becoming one with the vast awareness that has always been your true nature. Let go of being someone. Let go of being a person with a history and a future. Let go of being anything in particular. Just be. Just this pure being, this simple presence, this awareness aware of itself. No story, no identity, no boundary. Just infinite spaciousness, experiencing the miracle of being conscious, of being aware, of being here now. And as you rest in this pure being, this simple awareness, you might notice that the boundary between sleeping and waking has become very soft, very permeable. You are neither fully awake nor fully asleep, but resting in that liminal space between, that threshold space where the conscious and unconscious meet, where dreams and reality blend, where the separation between you and the world dissolves. This is a sacred space, this in-between place. Many spiritual traditions speak of it as the bardo, the space between one state and another, the gap where transformation happens, where the old falls away and the new has not yet emerged. You are in this space now, held by the darkness, supported by the silence, floating in the vast ocean of consciousness. Here, in this space, healing happens, not because you are doing anything to make it happen, but because this is what consciousness does. When we stop interfering, it returns to wholeness. It restores balance. It heals what has been wounded and renews what has been depleted. Let yourself be healed now. Let the darkness work on you, moving through your body like gentle hands, finding every place that hurts, every place that is tired, every place that has been holding tension for too long. Let it touch these places with tenderness, with compassion, with the infinite patience of the earth itself. Your heart has worked so hard, beating billions of times over your lifetime, never resting, never stopping, always faithful, always present. Thank your heart now for its tireless service. Feel it beating in your chest, steady and strong, pumping life through every cell, connecting you to the rhythm of existence itself. Your heart knows how to rest even while working, knows how to be at peace even while beating. Let yourself learn from your heart. Your breath has carried you through every moment of your life, from your first cry to this present instant, never failing, never forgetting, always there when you needed it. Thank your breath now for its constant presence. Feel how it asks nothing of you, how it simply flows in and out, requiring no effort, no control, no management. Let yourself learn from your breath. Your body has been your faithful companion through everything, through every joy and sorrow, through every challenge and celebration, through every moment of your existence. It has held you when you were sad, carried you when you were tired, healed your wounds without being asked, adapted to countless circumstances, survived against odds you cannot even imagine. Thank your body now for everything it has done, everything it continues to do. Forgive it for not being perfect, for aging, for sometimes hurting, for not matching your ideal. Your body is doing its best, has always been doing its best. It deserves your gratitude, your compassion, your love. And as you offer this gratitude, this compassion, this love to your body, feel how it softens even more, how it releases even more deeply, how it opens to the healing that is always available when we stop fighting, stop judging, stop demanding that things be different than they are. You are safe to completely let go now. There is nothing you need to protect, nothing you need to defend, nothing you need to hold on to. The universe is holding you. Life is supporting you. Consciousness is embracing you. You can release every last bit of control, every last shred of vigilance, every last fragment of resistance. Let go and fall. Fall into sleep like falling into the arms of a beloved, like falling into water on a hot day, like falling into peace that has no conditions, no requirements, no demands. Just fall, trusting completely that you will be caught, that you are already being caught, that you have always been held. The stories you heard tonight are now part of you, woven into your being like threads in a tapestry. They will work on you in ways you cannot predict or control, emerging when you need them, offering themselves when the moment is right. You do not need to remember them consciously. They are encoded in your deeper awareness now, available whenever you need their wisdom. And the essential teaching beneath all the stories, the truth that every story pointed to, is simply this: you are already home. You have always been home. You were never lost, never separate, never alone. The seeking was unnecessary. The striving was optional. The suffering was created by believing you were something you are not, a separate self cut off from the whole, a fragment disconnected from the infinite. But you are not separate. You are not a fragment. You are the whole experiencing itself as this particular form, the infinite, expressing itself as this finite being, consciousness itself dancing as this temporary dance called your life. And when this dance ends, when this body returns to dust, when this particular story completes itself, you will not end. You will simply return to what you always were, like a wave dissolving back into the ocean, like a breath releasing back into the air, like awareness, recognizing itself as awareness without the veil of individual identity. But you do not need to think about death or ending or what comes after. All of that is in some distant future that does not exist right now. Right now, in this moment, you are alive. You are breathing. You are aware. And this is enough. This is everything. This is the miracle that needs no improvement, no addition, no perfection. Feel the weight of your body now, so completely relaxed that it feels as if it has merged with whatever is supporting it, as if the boundary between your body and the bed or floor or chair has dissolved, as if you are being held by the earth itself, cradled in the arms of gravity, supported by the same force that holds stars in their courses and planets in their orbits. You are so heavy now, so deeply relaxed, that moving even a finger would require more effort than you have or want to give. Your arms are heavy, your legs are heavy, your whole body is heavy, anchored to this moment, to this place, to this beautiful surrender into rest. And yet, paradoxically, you also feel light, as if you could float away, as if the weight of your body is the only thing keeping you tethered to this world, as if you are a balloon gently held down, ready to drift into the vast sky of sleep, into the infinite spaciousness of dreams, into the formless ocean of deep rest. Let yourself float now. Let yourself drift. There is nothing holding you here. Accept your own gentle choice to remain present for just a few moments more, listening to these words, receiving these final blessings, allowing this journey to complete itself in its own perfect time. The cherry blossoms are still falling in that monastery where Kaito learned to let them fall without trying to catch them. They fall tonight, as they have fallen for countless springs, as they will fall for countless more, each blossom unique and perfect in its brief moment of falling, then dissolving into the earth to nourish new growth, completing the cycle that has no beginning and no end. You are like these blossoms, falling through this life, this brief precious moment of being in form, and then returning to the source from which you came. But unlike the blossoms, you are also the tree from which they fall, and the earth to which they return, and the sky through which they move, and the awareness that witnesses it all. You are everything. You have always been everything. The belief in being just this small, separate self was a beautiful game of forgetting, a cosmic game of hide and seek, where the infinite pretends to be finite, where the eternal plays at being temporary, where consciousness acts as if it could be unconscious. But now you can remember, not fully, perhaps, not permanently, but in this moment, in this gentle darkness, in this sacred space of rest, you can touch the memory of what you truly are. You can feel the infinity that lives within this finite form. You can sense the eternity that pulses through this temporary life. And in this remembering, even if only for a breath, even if only for a heartbeat, there is such peace, such freedom, such relief from the burden of being only yourself, only this small story, only this limited identity. Let yourself rest in the vastness now. Let the small self dissolve like sugar in tea, sweetening everything but losing its separate form. Let yourself be everything and nothing, form and emptiness, finite and infinite, all at once, all together, all complete. The teachings are complete. The stories are told. The journey is finished. All that remains is this moment, this breath, this gentle descent into the deepest rest you have known in so very long. You have been carried here by the current of these words, by the wisdom of the ancient teachers, by the compassion of all beings who have walked this path before you. And now you can rest, not someday, not when everything is perfect, not when you finally achieve what you think you need to achieve. Now, right now, exactly as you are, exactly where you are, in this imperfect, beautiful, sacred moment. May you sleep deeply tonight, held by the darkness, rocked by your own gentle breathing, supported by the earth beneath you. May your dreams be peaceful, your rest complete, your healing profound. May you wake tomorrow carrying something wordless but transformative, something you cannot name but that changes everything. May all the beings who are lying down to rest tonight, all across this world, in every country and culture and circumstance, may they all find the peace you are finding now. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings know their true nature. May all beings rest in the peace that passes all understanding. And may you, dear one, resting here in this darkness, breathing so softly now, may you know that you are loved, loved beyond words, loved beyond reason, loved simply for being, not because of what you do or what you achieve or how perfect you are, but because you are here, because you exist, because the universe expresses itself through your particular precious form. You are wanted here. You belong here. There is no mistake in your existence, no accident in your being. You are exactly where you need to be, exactly who you need to be, exactly as you are meant to be in this moment. Nothing needs to change for you to be worthy of rest, worthy of peace, worthy of love. Let this truth sink into you now like rain soaking into dry earth. You are enough. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. The striving can stop. The seeking can end. The struggle can release. You can simply be, simply rest, simply allow yourself to be held by this moment that loves you unconditionally. Your eyes are closed now, have been closed for some time, heavy and relaxed. No desire to open them, no need to see anything, just resting in the darkness behind your lids, in the soft black space that is so comfortable, so welcoming, so perfectly designed for rest. Your jaw is loose, your mouth slightly open perhaps, breathing so easily now. No effort required, just air flowing in and out, as natural as the tide, as effortless as clouds drifting across the sky. Your mind has quieted to barely a whisper, thoughts arising so slowly now, if at all, and when they do appear they are like shadows in twilight, barely visible, barely real, dissolving almost as soon as they form, leaving only spaciousness, only silence, only peace. You are drifting now, floating in that beautiful space between waking and sleeping, between conscious and unconscious, between the world and the formless. This is where the magic happens, where healing occurs, where transformation takes place without effort or striving. Let yourself drift deeper. There is nothing to hold on to, nothing to accomplish, nowhere to arrive. Just drifting, floating, dissolving into the vast ocean of sleep, into the infinite darkness that holds all rest, into the formless awareness that is your true home. The words are fading now, becoming quieter, more distant, like sounds heard from far away, barely audible, barely there. You do not need them anymore. You do not need anything anymore. You can simply be, simply rest, simply sleep. Sleep now, dear one. Let go completely. Fall into the darkness that holds you like the most loving embrace. Trust the process. Trust your body. Trust the wisdom that knows how to rest, how to heal, how to renew. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Sleep with the knowledge that you are safe. You are held. You are loved beyond measure. Sleep knowing that everything is okay, has always been okay, will always be okay. I promise. Sleep, rest, peace. You are home. You have always been home. Sleep now. Just sleep, rest, peace, home.